Greetings, fellow Amblemites. Tiki here.
And BlueDragonFive.
And SandyClaws.
And Jacob Wile too.
And welcome to Season 3 of Spielberg
Month.
Since Steven Spielberg does do audio commentary on his own work, we thought we'd do it for him. After all he's done for us, it's the least we can do for him. Of course, we've selected 5 films from his vast catalog of work to commentate on. So let's adventure into the nostalgic and alien alike. And while you're on the hook, let's bridge the gap between history and cinema on
Spielberg
Month.
Let's get those laughs in while we can, gentlemen. All right, guys. Tonight is this is going to be a landmark for us. This might be reaching freakazoid levels of one of the longest podcasts we've ever done. But for good reason. Tonight we're finally getting around to Schindler's List on Spielberg Month. Season 3 finale. This is one that we've kind of had in the pipeline since season 2. And honestly, for me personally, as kind of like the head of the channel, this is one that I've always been nervous about. Because I feel like this is one that we're going to really have to tread carefully on. Not to give away thesis statements or anything, just kind of like setting up the movie. Dragon, would you like to get some background in, and then we'll jump right into it?
Sure. I mean, everyone has a history with Schindler's List. We don't even need to dwell on that. We're just going to go with the actual history, or like what got this movie made. So briefly, let me just fire on through it here. So Schindler's List really gets started in '63, or one of our characters in the movie, believe it or not. One of the, of course, Schindler's List, a very historic biopic. You know, of course, the events that actually happened during the Holocaust in Krakow and so on and so forth. Poldek Pfeifferberg, one of the characters. He's the writer in the movie. He wrote a book. Well, I should say, he started a mission in life. To 3 years before Schindler died, he wanted to tell the Oscar Schindler story, because you got to remember, in the '60s especially, the Holocaust wasn't really a widely known thing. I mean, it wasn't necessarily hidden, but it was a thing that was kind of growing scarce and growing kind of like, it was kind of history's embarrassment for many years. So this is the thing. He wanted to tell this story. He wanted to really kind of tell the story through this one kind of heroic guy, this guy with a very interesting story. So again, he's trying to get a movie made to kind of relay the story. So in 1982, it picks up traction where there's this book that is written called Schindler's Ark, which tells the Oscar Schindler story. So this creates interest. It's kind of a viable property when there's like a book, very much like Jaws, with kind of Spielberg's big break with Jaws. They're like, hey, popular book, we can make a movie off of it. So speaking of Jaws,
I feel like much how Jaws was the big break into blockbuster storytelling, this was like Spielberg kind of legitimizing himself, because at that time Spielberg was still known as like, the kid, like the guy that broke into the Universal lot, the maverick who's making all these popcorn movies.
Certainly. And so Sid Sheinberg, kind of the patriarch of Spielberg in a way. So Sid Sheinberg, he's of course, the guy who gave Spielberg his big break in the first place, contract him. He's just a big, lifelong friend of Steven Spielberg's. He gave him the Schindler's Ark book. And he told him, this is your destiny. You must direct this. You're going to read this, and you're going to want it. You're going to need to direct this. It's like your duty as a director. Made it very important, very mythic for Spielberg. And of course, Spielberg, any of us, that's intimidating. If you're telling this story, and again, the story's not really widely told. If you're going to tell this, and you're like one of the most, like all scrutiny, all eyes fall on you if your name is attached to this movie. It took him roughly, yeah.
And also especially considering Spielberg's Jewish himself.
Of course, and I'll get there in a moment. So, of course, it took 10 years roughly for him. Basically, took him 10 years to really get the movie off the ground. Where he had to get the book. He bought the book's rights, and a lot of it was just honestly waiting and kind of busy with other projects. And he was just like waiting till the time was right, like waiting till the stars aligned, till he had like a sign to do it. Because he almost, again, very trepidatiously, he was tackling this movie. He almost gave it to Martin Scorsese.
Oh man, that would have been a very different movie.
That's the thing. I mean, he almost gave the Scorsese, and it was like, because again, it's like I don't know if I can do this.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, he basically relented. And
Scorsese like convinced him a Jewish director had to make it, though.
Sure. Yes. Of course. So there were two big motivating. No, go on.
I was gonna say it's kind of interesting that like Universal actually convinced him to do Jurassic Park first. At first, he was confused why, but after making this, he realized why.
Yes, and again, those there were two motivating things that kind of got. Those are like the two signs from God almost that kind of got Spielberg to go along with this here. Where one, Spielberg has this really interesting personal history with being Jewish, where for many years he was kind of he was bullied as a kid, and he was kind of ashamed of. He grew up in a very non-Jewish neighborhood, and he was kind of there's this famous story. His grandfather called out to him Shmuel, his nickname in Hebrew, I believe. Called out to him Shmuel, and he was embarrassed by this. And when he got married to Kate Capshaw,
oh God,
I believe she converted, and in doing so, she really brought religion back into Spielberg's life. So that's when he really embraced his.
Nice. That's nice.
Yeah, I mean, she's a huge reason this movie got made, and we'll get into that in a moment.
That's kind of a funny full circle thing.
Maybe again, she kind of disappointed us, Willie Scott, but again, she gave us one of the most prolific films of all time, so it balances out.
Oh man.
so speaking of which, again, that's the main thing that got the movie made. The other thing, of course, that is kind of like the fire that kind of lit under Spielberg here is that in the 90s, especially, there was kind of a surge of neo-Nazism. There was like a lot of Holocaust deniers and neo-Nazis, and those kind of you get a lot of skinheads merging in the 90s, early 90s, I guess. And that was just kind of like, okay, oh my God, like that's kind of like the duty of I have to get this movie made because otherwise, who else is going to make it? It's like a service beyond just being an artist. It's it's being kind of a humanitarian sort of thing. I got to do this. So 1993 rolls around again after some conversations. Universally kind of reaches the agreement to, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm finally going to do it, guys, but only if I get to do Jurassic Park first, because smartly Spielberg kind of came to the realization, you know what? If I'm doing Jurassic Park, kind of the fun like every kid dreams of dinosaurs movie. There's going to be an emotional drain if I do Schindler's List while I'm doing that. So I'm going to do Jurassic Park first, get all the yucks out of the way, then I'm going to really commit to Schindler's List. So in doing so, of course the main fundamental things we'll jump right into it here is, of course, he went for the black and white documentary style, which the studio fought him on, by the way. And of course, I think we'll see in various points in the movie, it was the smartest choice he made. One of the smartest choices he made, like, we got to do this in black and white. We got to do it like a documentary. We can't sensationalize this. We can't do it in color or else it gets gratuitous. Like, very smart choices with things like that. He went against almost everything, kind of the Spielberg playbook on this one. Like, there's only like one crane shot in this movie, like one overhead shot approximately. It was a long 72-day shoot, and again, here's where Kate Capshaw comes into play big time here, where three things really got Spielberg through this. I mean, there were a number of small things, but there are three main things. He had his family there at Krakow because he lived they shot on location at the actual locations, Krakow and Auschwitz. When they did that, he had his family, I believe more so in kind of the Krakow area, I believe. He and his family kind of like a little they moved in either to one of the homes, or like they had like a little thing set up near the homes. I can't quite recall, but each night he would go home just devastated, and his family would kind of comfort him and kind of keep him steady.
Oh man, and they would watch Seinfeld together, which I love that story.
Is that true?
Yes.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, Spielberg would unwind by watching Seinfeld.
And of course, it comes full circle with Seinfeld with the Raincoats episode, where
of course.
That's the famous episode where it's like, you were making out during Schindler's List.
Oh my God.
So that one, that's the famous two-parter where they have all the Schindler two parts. So that's oh my God, that's so wonderfully full circle. I didn't know that. I'm pleased to know that one. So also, he had regular calls to Robin Williams for like an hour on the phone, where he'd be so bummed out. He calls up Robin, I need a laugh, and Robin Williams would fire into like a whole to what we love him for about an hour. He'd improvise and he'd entertain a defeated Spielberg and got him laughing, and just laughing over proctology jokes. And of course the other thing, editing Jurassic Park, because they shot all the footage. Again, like you got family, you got Robin Williams, and you got dinosaurs, man.
Jerry Seinfeld. I mean,
yes, and Seinfeld. If you're gonna have like the ultimate pick-me-up package, that's it.
And rumors have it though that also the cartoons he was working on, like they sent him scripts and like that got him out of the doldrums too sometimes.
Which adds a great deal of resonance for like kind of the stuff that we always talk about and love with great reverence, Freakazoid and Animaniacs and kind of the Amblin, the Amblin cartoons that really kind of elevated our nostalgia.
Oh yeah.
So those got him through the process, and of course, the end thing here is that this film, Spielberg was not paid for this film. He accepted no money for this film. What he did was something historic and awesome. He started the Shoah Foundation, with basically what he would have been paid for the movie. There were no, basically all the money went directly to forming the Shoah Foundation, which basically, it takes in survivors' stories and basically talks about the Holocaust and the whole shebang. And of course, it was won an Oscar. It was just a very, very acclaimed and justly so.
Like I said, this was definitely like the moment in time where Spielberg's career kind of transitioned. It's like, oh crap, this guy is more than just kind of like the maverick kid who broke into the Universal lot.
He's not just the Universal Wonderkin. He's something more.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that said, Tiki, hit him with the lethal weapon of it all.
All right, folks. Well, we are with this one. This is going to be a very long conversation. Obviously, we're looking at about 3 hours and 15 minutes worth of conversation on top of the already good 10 minutes of backstory that we've given. So apologies on that front, but we'll try and keep the conversation interesting and engaging. But alas, the movie is on Netflix or any other streaming service if you want to watch it. So go ahead and get hooked up with timestamp 000. I'm going to go ahead and press. I'm sorry. I'm going to go ahead and count up and press play when I count up to 3 and say go. So I'm going to count up to 3 and say go. When you hear me say go, basic idea is you're going to press play. So you guys ready?
Yes.
All right, strap in, folks. Let's get started. Schindler's List in 1, 2, 3, go.
Ready as we'll ever be.
Now, some of us have the FBI logo, so is that going to affect the timing?
Look at him go.
Yep.
Sandy, maybe something you could have brought up beforehand. Maybe, perhaps.
No, I don't have the FBI logo.
Oh, no. It's all good, Sandy. That's why we all got hooked up to Netflix.
Yeah, we're all
okay.
using Netflix.
I see. Okay.
So we start off with the lit candle, the lit flame, and just on the whole here, we start with color. And color is pivotal. Color, I would read, is kind of the symbol of hope, family, and importantly, safety. That's kind of what we establish with color here. And we open on the Sabbath, the day of rest, which, of course, a lot of this comes wonderfully full circle. So, again, we're thinking right out the gate on this movie.
So I guess now would be a good time to kind of go round robin and give our thesis statements for the movie, because we sort of wanted to jump into the actual commentary before we did that.
Sure.
Right. Anyone want to start in particular?
I don't have much of a really history with this film. I know my sister loves studying the Holocaust and really that era of history, and so I'm around it, fairly often. She loves this movie. She has multiple copies of it, and she has a big poster in her room and everything. So I'm definitely familiar with it. I know the first time I ended up watching it was a few years ago, and it's just really hard to sit through. This movie it's Spielberg spared no expense, no pun intended, when making this movie, and it definitely shows. And it's definitely a watchable movie by all means, but it's definitely it's definitely heartbreaking.
I'm glad that you bring that distinction into it. But go ahead.
I'm sorry.
That's pretty much it. It's a heartbreaking film, but at the same time, it's wonderful.
Real quick, just want to talk about what's going on the screen here for a brief minute here. Just again,
I just love how it doesn't delve into too much gratuity.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love how we have this brilliant transition from kind of the snuffed out flame to to the train steam, and of course we have like a lot of it evokes some really interesting imagery that we're building to as the movie kind of starts. And importantly, I like this litof detail on a rewatch. It's kind of stuck out to me that we draw focus to the mundane office supplies that holds lives in the balance. And of course, with a movie called Schindler's List, a list, just ink and paper, is going to be what kind of is so many people's salvation. So we have to draw in the importance of bureaucracy in the movie with things like that. So it's really, really clever.
As Stern says later, This paper is life.
Exactly.
All right, Dragon, would you like to give a thesis statement now?
I guess briefly, it's that folks, I'd studied portions of this movie. I remember, and I'd seen portions before I had to study, and then years later, it's been I haven't really watched it from start to finish for many years. And recently I kind of sat down and I watched it with kind of the conveniency of Netflix, that having to switch the disc, and that wasn't something that scared me off. Just like I always had the disc at the ready, and I was always like intending to watch it from the beginning. It's like, okay, I've seen like all the scenes, like all the from various Spielberg documentaries I've seen, kind of like, yeah, okay, there are the important scenes, and then of course watching from start to finish, I was just so blown away by just, again, it's Spielberg's masterpiece, pure and simple. I mean. And it was like I absolutely got it. Like, yeah, this is the one they remember him for. This is why it's one of those movies. It's just it got everything so right. And I love how, kind of in a way, I love the Shape of Water. It's like a film where nothing is by accident, where everything is done intentionally. It's just it's so well orchestrated, and so it's kind of Spielberg firing on all cylinders. It's kind of Spielberg at the kind of the phantasm level of his directing caliber, in a way. It's like, again, it's Spielberg just kind of like boiled down and pointed to like his directing essentials that you get from this movie. And again, just with that pressing tension of like, this is a guy who is like the deepest, most personal subject for him on a level, and it's gonna get that translating the material without any of Spielberg's usual tools. So I was very impressed. The movie is just, it's stunning.
All right. I'm going to quickly dovetail both Jacob and I's theses on this movie, because we've both just sat through it for the first time today, so we're kind of in a very similar position, and I also want to quickly get to the stuff on screen.
Yes, please.
So, yeah, overall, I would say I don't necessarily think this is as good as Saving Private Ryan, but it's like it's inappropriate to even compare it. To me, it's like, it's not quite like, it's less likable, it's less watchable and more watchable at the same time. It's got a lot of, I'm glad that Sandy hit on the points of watchability, because while it is horrific, at the same time, it's got a really good beat to it, and it's got all these fascinating arcs going on. And my favorite arc is the thing between Liam Neeson and Ralph Fiennes. That whole dynamic is one of the best Spielberg like 1-2 character punches I've seen in a Spielberg movie. It just, oh man, it's so good.
I mean, Neeson's my favorite part of this movie too. I mean, I love just the overall arc of like where Schindler goes and how Spielberg approached that, because he approached that in a really great way. Speaking of Schindler himself, yeah,
I just think it's kind of interesting, like how they actually changed him a bit for this movie.
Well, yeah, I don't know. He's pretty on the money in
real life, though. He was actually interested in saving the Jewish people from the very start, instead of like slowly coming to it.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I keep reading.
And again, the art keeps it ambiguous. That's kind of what Spielberg approached it as. If he kept it like almost like a rosebud mystery of like, at what point did he, like, he is doing things that are saving the Jews. It's just the question of, is he doing it out of purely self-interest, or is he just using that as the excuse? And again, I think it's kind of a determination each person can make. So he kind of had his cake and he ate it too on that, which is kind of cool.
I like how he's being played here kind of as a James Bond type, where we don't see his full face. He's kind of, he's tossing money to the guy.
I mean, Neeson referred to it as like a bon vivant personality, which essentially is like a playboy, but basically plays like a Bruce Wayne type, like a James Bond or a Bruce Wayne. He's a ladies' man. He's
Who is that man? That's Oscar Schindler. I love how delighted that guy is by the Oscar Schindler name reveal. I just love it. He's just tinkle pink, like, oh, that's Oscar Schindler.
You gotta remember that Liam Neeson, when he was cast for this movie, he was an unknown at the time, because they were people were asking for the role, like Mel Gibson and Kevin Costner. They wanted in on this, and Liam Neeson's like, Spielberg just went with his guns and like, this guy looks a little bit like Oscar Schindler with more hair. And he shows talent. He's the guy.
It's funny to think of Liam Neeson being an unknown. That's really odd to think about.
This was really early for him. I guess. I mean, if anything, he probably had bit parts, mostly TV would be my guess. I don't know what exactly he was doing before this. This is the first big movie he did, at the very least.
And what a movie to start out with.
I don't know I'm not sure what he started out with. It's a thing I can't. It's like one of those questions. Like it's almost like
what a big breakout movie!
You could pretty much be arguing that this movie like jump started his career even more.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think of Darkman. Darkman was probably after this. I'm saying that was like a known role for him. I don't know if that was before or after this. It was either like late because '89 had to come out first. It was right after this. That's when he had to do Darkman, I guess. Well, if this is '93, it might have been in the '90 range. Okay, the point is I guess he's been kind of climbing up and still relatively unknown at the very least. So yeah, he's kind of playing it like The Great Gatsby here too, with that kind of a bon vivant playboy. It's kind of another comparison I've heard. Kind of like Spielberg's kind of referred to him as kind of a Great Gatsby in this introduction here.
I can see that.
Yeah,
I just love the idea that this whole sequence starts out with the guy alone in the corner of the room, and then just with the simplicity of ordering a drink, just ordering a round of drinks, and he's got like the whole room just like swarming to him.
Yeah. I just love Schindler studying the room, and he's building these very strategic bonds with the Nazis, which are going to serve him later. Of like, okay, I have like basically this is a guy who celebrates pleasantries in every way that I love. It's just he knows exactly what. But it's almost as if he studies humanity. Again, his mastery is over humanity, which of course is going to be what kind of drives his arc, unbeknownst to himself. That he's a man who deals in humanity, and of course, like he's dealing in this really, again, it's like we set up in this opening, we kind of set up some humor and bemusement in these small places that poke air holes into the darkness that's going to occur later, and that reflects life a little bit. And like all of our fun stuff here is like, yeah, I mean, if you're Oscar Schindler, you're
That's
living
awesome.
up. You're having a good.
It's still kind of interesting that there's some of the usual Spielberg levity in this movie.
That's the thing. I think mainly in the first act here, but honestly, the majority of the Oscar Schindler.
You know what? Oddly enough, some of it comes from Ralph Fiennes.
It does in a creepy.
Which is like the most goddamn like impressive balancing act I've ever seen with a villain.
Is Ralph Fiennes? He has this amazing kind of. He's kind of the anti-Schindler, and he's like the perfect parallel for Oscar Schindler.
And what's interesting though is that, like how I mentioned that they like upped up the jerkiness of Oscar, they actually toned down a bit of Goth.
Because Goth was apparently like a famous quote is that he didn't like to have breakfast before killing a Jew.
Huh.
Yeah, like believe it or not, like they actually toned it down for this movie because he was like. Basically, according to like several stuff, he was actually like that. Where even the Nazis found him inhumane.
Wow.
So,
yeah, I can confirm that to you. He exactly what that quote was.
Mm-hmm.
So with that earlier scene too, I like that he's strategically spending his money versus later when he's going to be emotionally spending his money. So again, we're kind of seeing where Oscar started and where he's going to end up.
You definitely feel a sense of progression as this movie goes forward too.
Absolutely. Again, nothing's wasted. It's kind of the Brad Bird philosophy of like use every part of the buffalo. We use every part of the buffalo in this movie. Also, I love and him walking up the staircase and basically building to him meeting Stern. I love that it's Schindler kind of surrounded by a sea of Jews, and it's kind of set up for like a mythic moment where again he's going to become our proverbial Moses. I mean, self-described by Goethe later on. That's the thing. It's like kind of a self. What do you think you are, Moses? Of course, there's a fun meta quality. The fact that he was in Prince of Egypt, Ralph Fiennes, who was brothers with Moses, which is kind of trippy when you think about it. Let's talk about the other star of this movie here, the great Ben Kingsley.
Yeah, Ben Kingsley is kind of like a very understated character here, and like this is a much less showy performance than something like Gandhi, but in a way, it's just as impactful. I mean, I love how Ben Kingsley, through at least the first half of the movie, doesn't trust Oscar as far as he can throw him. You know what I mean? It's like this bond that slowly slowly metamorphoses through time.
There's an understandable distrust of like, these are hard times, and this guy's being awfully nice to me. And would you trust a guy in this position of power? Like, for all he knows, he could be a Goth right now. He could be, he could be Amon Goth in terms of, like, he could just snap like a turn of a dime.
Mm. And I also just love how the idea that this guy just kind of like swaggers in, he's just like calling him out, in front of everyone. He wants to have that conversation like a Nazi would, you know what I mean? It's like at this point, Schindler, well, he's definitely in good with the Nazi party. He hasn't really learned the pleasantries in communicating with the Jewish community, which of course this movie is gonna be a huge road to go down.
A real quick story here. So this, you'll see Liam Neeson smoking here, and again, we kind of shoot the smoking really well. Of course, Janusz Kaminski did an excellent job with the cinematography on this film. Again, he's Spielberg's guy, and I don't know if this is the first movie he worked on. Basically, I know he working with Michael Kahn and Kaminski really solidified the relationship on this movie. And they got to a point where he wants to do all of his movies with these two specific editors and cinematographers. At the very least, the Kaminski was definitely huge on this movie, whether it's like lifelong beforehand or not. Regardless, the smoking here, Spielberg is very specific with the direction on the smoking with Neeson, and to the point where Neeson almost he was contemplating quitting the movie. Like, oh my god, he's like, I don't want to be a puppet on this. And Ben Kingsley talking, basically, the scene you have before you here is almost like if you just had like a conversation playing over this, where Kingsley's telling him, like, no, trust me, this guy's a visionary. He knows exactly what he's doing here. Of course, as the process went on, I said, oh my god, Ben Kingsley knew exactly what he was talking about. So of course, by the way, with Stern, he's a combination of a few characters. And I like that we do reference these characters in the movie, like we name drop them. Of course, in a movie all about names, it makes sense. We name drop them, but so we still honor these guys, where he's a combination of three characters. So there is Stern, but there's this guy, Abraham Bankier, and there's another guy, Meektep Pemper. Basically, Mr. Pemper and Mr. Bankier. Those two guys, along with Stern, are kind of mixed together and make kind of the Stern character we had before. So again, liberties were taken, but again, I don't think any of the liberties taken in the movie are really outside the realm of, like, again, it's absolutely what happened. We just kind of made it a little bit more cinematic without even changing anything, honestly. It's just like it happened.
It's basically they combine these characters for the sake of the narrative.
Certainly.
All right, so to me, one of the most disquieting elements of the movie is how the humanity of the Jewish people is just slowly but surely stripped away from them. And I don't think the latter half of the movie is nearly as impactful if you don't see them in a place of relative comfort. Like, the situation in the ghetto isn't great, but as we see in that haunting line, it's like, well, this is rock bottom, like it couldn't get worse than this.
See, the idea was that the ghetto, before it was honestly even like referred to as a ghetto, just, Krakow, it was kind of a party town back in the day. And, again, it was kind of a nice, pleasant place. And the idea, and the twisted idea we have, again, it's kind of, I guess, reflected in history, is that the Nazis wanted to kind of basically make the party town their own and basically, kind of purge the Jews from the town and just kind of make it basically their own. Like, it was already a fine party town. We'll make it like a better party town, which is, it's really twisted.
Uh-huh.
I love these guys. This one I'm talking about. I think Act 1 might be the whole movie is great, but I think Act 1 might be my favorite because it fits into what I love with Spielberg movies. I mentioned this with Catch Me If You Can in the Terminal. I love seeing evolving methodology and seeing our characters kind of grow and kind of learn their methods. And especially with Oscar Schindler, you have such a rich character we can do that with, where you see right now, he kind of sweet talks the black market guys into how he's going to get materials, how he's going to basically be, again, strategically spending his money so he can, so he can manipulate the Nazis.
I love how it goes on about the shirt.
Exactly, like the shirt. Again, the shirt's a big detail because again, the other Nazis are going to be envious of the shirt. That's the thing; they're going to be envious of that shirt. It's like the little thing. It's like these little micro touches in dealing with business. It's like you dress to impress. It's like the card thing from American Psycho. The card, the card does everything. You need to impress. It's like psychological warfare in a business room almost. Of course, here's something we've been kind of building with Spielberg Month here. Again, a lot of big walking shots.
Oh yeah. War of the Worlds definitely echoed some of this stuff.
Definitely.
Both involved
Being an extra. Imagine being an extra and not knowing whether you're going to be a Jew or a German.
Well, speaking of that, so again, the majority of our extras are Polish and German, and they are definitely many Jewish, certainly. But the German extras who were, again, they actually got real Germans to be Nazis, and again, this is kind of the '90s where that subject is quite, again, it's dicey in the early '90s. Hence the reason the movie's being made. Yeah. And there are a lot of Germans who are nervous to be dressed as Nazis, a very taboo subject at the time, and a lot of them were very hesitant. And Spielberg, believe it or not, was really hesitant in directing him because there was a thing just in his DNA where it's like he saw them in head to toe in Nazi gear, and again in the location, the experience is feeling so surreal. They were geeking out on him, saying, "Oh my God, we love E.T.," and he was afraid to talk to him, and
almost kind of like in a way that's almost kind of like a fiction meets reality type of thing with Schindler and his arc.
I know what's so
very uncomfortable with praise.
What's so beautiful and meta about it too is that basically what happened was he kept feeling this way until Passover, where the German actors, whether they were Jewish or not, they kind of joined in on the Passover of it all, and they just they palled around with everybody who was taking part in Passover. And Spielberg saw this and he kind of cried. He's like, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful." Yeah, see, that's how we got over the phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, a lot of this is really go on.
But let's just face it, working on a movie like this, everybody needs to pick every pick-me-up they can get.
Certainly. Okay, now of course, right here is here's kind of the start of it, I guess. Again, we don't get super. I love that we delay the brutality until
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And to me, do you agree that it makes the brutality even more impactful to see the Jews in a place of complacency almost?
And the fact that the first show of extreme brutality came from a kid, no less.
Goodbye, Jews. That's still crazy.
Yeah, I think you're right, Tiki. I think it makes it more impactful.
I agree with you, yes. And honestly, basically, I would read that the end of Act 1 is the whole the liquidation scene. The end of the liquidation scene. That's the end of Act 1. Where basically, it's like we get to the 50-minute mark, then all hell breaks loose, and then that's the end of Act 1. That's where it's like you're taking in just the sight that you saw, and then we're kind of rebuilding. Basically, when Schindler's in an empty factory, it's like, okay, that's how we relate to Schindler, but we've seen this this atrocity occur, and we thought we were in kind of the okay, it's kind of a survival movie, and just like kind of a businessman, we're setting up this businessman, how he's going to interact with kind of this workforce. It's really just kind of beaten down. It might be kind of like a social commentary film. Then, of course, it just boils down to oh my. Remember, there's a lot of horror going on here, folks. Let's not forget that. Hence the movie.
A lot of the stuff in this movie wouldn't be out of place in a horror movie.
I mean, we do have sequences later on, especially that we're absolutely in a horror movie, and of course, I think that liquidation scene is probably the first big horror movie scene of the whole piece.
The gun jamming scene might be my favorite scene in the whole movie.
It is, and it's a fascinating. We'll get there. And when I was rewatching the movie, I hit upon something that I didn't hit upon before with that scene. It's kind of really kind of eerie and like, oh my God, that was so clever.
Looking at this, I'm just realizing now. You know how you see those old vintage black and white photographs of the Holocaust and Jews, all the on it. This looks like one of those moving photographs. It looks like it's one of those photographs, but it's moving because it's shot on film. It looks beautiful. The colors are just perfect. Well, I mean, colors for as far as black and white can go, but you know what I mean.
So was this film actually shot on black and white film or just decolorized?
Here's the thing. I think it was shot on black and white film, except for those few color sequences. I'm pretty sure, but I don't know 100%. I could be wrong about that. Let me get clear. I don't. Not 100% on that. I'm pretty sure just because he wanted to shoot black and white from the get-go, but now. When they shoot digital, you have to shoot color, then decolorize. I don't know if on film if you had that liberty or not. I'm not entirely. Basically, I don't know if it was as easy as you can do it now.
I mean, I know because in some cases, they have to even with film, they have to shoot it in color, then just digitally decolorize it.
Yeah,
not even necessarily. I mean, obviously the digital advancement wasn't as great as it was, back then. Obviously.
Yeah. Also,
still possible though.
Yeah. Of course, we saw a writer, by the way, in the earlier scene. Again, some levity that we did have was that we had we had kind of our soldier who's kind of this horrible job where he's like in the middle between kind of we have our Jews and we have our we have our Nazis, and this guy's like he's basically a Jew kind of turned Nazi, a kind of a Jewish soldier, and it's kind of like it's almost like a clown position. Mm-hmm. He's kind of mocked for it.
Would you guys agree this looks like one of those moving photographs?
Sandy, I definitely think you're on point. That's very much what Spielberg was going for.
Here's
kind of matches with the documentary style he was aiming for.
Yeah.
Well, here's the interesting thing about the documentary style is that the documentary style, whenever the horror unfolds, that's purely documentary style. But what we're seeing now, mainly these Schindler scenes, but even just some of the stuff, the majority of the first act, unless something really horrific is happening, it gets cinematic until those moments of horror happen.
Like, who is that man? It's Oscar Schindler.
Like again, we have all these really
very much like playing into the Gatsby of it all.
We have all these great shots, and again, very interestingly, just kind of composed. And then, of course, we have just like we shooting in the most like straightforward, like, yes, folks, this happened in that documentary style. So again, it looks just as photographic as it can be in that sequence, especially. And here, it's just kind of in that same world when we go cinematic with it. By the way, so Schindler, so the big influence, the base of the big thing the big point of reference that Neeson was given by Spielberg was this guy named Steve Ross. So Steve Ross was, I believe, a producer, if not like kind of like an executive, like a head, one of the heads of Time Warner. And he was a lifelong friend of Steven Spielberg's, and Spielberg has self-described this guy as his own personal Oscar Schindler. Like, he has a special thanks towards the end of the movie. So, like, Steve Ross is just like, that was like the big guy who was like, for him, he championed him in film along with guys like Sid Sheinberg. So, Steve Ross was like mainly mannerism and just kind of like, I guess, kind of the personality type was very Steve Ross-esque.
How much of this like was actually from the location? Like, did they actually build a bunch of sets too?
Well, here's what they did is so they're actually shooting on location. Here's the line. I'm not sure exactly how they went about this, but what they did is you can't build specifically in Auschwitz. Like right now, we're mainly in kind of the kind of town outside of Auschwitz. We're in kind of in Krakow, or it's like a train ride down there where. Basically, you can't build. I know in Auschwitz you cannot build anything anti-Semitic there, so they have to do that. So they can go there and they can do like the exterior shots in it. They have to. I suppose they would have to cover up swastikas and stuff like that. But anything like that, they'd have to recreate. So again, it is like all the Krakow stuff probably does happen exactly in Krakow, and they're building just as much as they can on the actual location. Just like Auschwitz, that's where things get. That's where you have the historical kind of thing, where history meets fiction in a way there.
Okay, would you guys agree that Auschwitz is the frickin' shark in this movie?
Essentially, I would we build it up like the shark, yes. Yeah. We do. I love how we have all these little things throughout Act 1 and Act 2 that, again, evoke Auschwitz imagery, and like it prepares you for Auschwitz. And of course, we have our Indianapolis equivalent of a scene about Auschwitz where we're talking about what inspires this.
This is jumping ahead quite a bit. Obviously, it's like almost very close to the end of the movie. But
I mean, I think we're kind of free to jump around considering the cube.
That's not. I wasn't like counteracting your point or anything. I was just about to say something different. What I was saying was that like throughout this scene, throughout this movie, you see a lot of text like saying like describing what's going on, stuff like that. But all that Auschwitz gets is just Auschwitz. Like, you know what this is, you know it's scary, you know it's coming.
Ooh, that's a good pull, Jacob. I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah.
Right, real quick, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. It makes me really love Act 1. So I love how Stern he's doing kind of that Spielberg thing I like here, where we have the documents made and he crumples it up, and the forged documents made, and he's crumpling it up and he's like dipping coffee on it to make it look. The man's like like 50 plus years old. Man's like 53 years old. Has to look like he's. It's like those clever little notions. That's the thing I love, and we're seeing that. We have this great John Williams score, by the way. And the funny story is, John Williams, when he did this movie, John Williams is kind of parent. He gets he's very neurotic when he does movies for Spielberg because he wants to do them just, and he wants to do a good job. But out of all the projects he's ever done, this one was like, Steven, I don't know if I can do this. I mean, this is like a very important movie. And basically he has this great line where he says to Spielberg, like, you're going to want someone better than me. I don't know if I'm right for this. All the people who are right for this are dead, John. I need you to do this. all the great composers who could score this are no longer with us, so it falls on John Williams' shoulders. We have like great score during this sequence of Stern, helping and again, kind of the embellishing tip, like telling them, okay, embellish, make yourselves like an essential worker, all these little documentation, little helpful hints and such. These are all like my favorite.
Basically, kind of like the type of stuff you would see like to do good at a job interview with, but amplified to a life and death situation.
Yeah, again, it's like the plane scene from Catch Me If You Can, like the whole like how he makes the fake check and stuff like that. That's stuff I live for with Spielberg. It's like, yes, perfect.
It's reality.
Yeah. Really well made sequence. Like we have and Michael Kahn did a really good job in editing this film. There's a sequence later on, Act 2. That is stunning, and we'll get there when we get there. That's probably the best part of editing in the entire film. But editing all throughout the film was very solid, very consistent. And like we do montage, it's really solid montage work. We get a lot done. We don't waste any time. Again, the film does not waste any time. Does not waste any part of the buffalo.
Now, I want to kind of make a distinction here.
Yeah.
Between I think there's a very important line we need to make. I think there's a line where there's Spielberg movies.
Yeah.
Spielberg movies I would classify as like the E.T.s of the world, the Jaws, the Jurassic.
Yeah.
And then there's movies directed by Spielberg. Sure. I would say this is absolutely at the cream of the crop in the category of movies directed by Spielberg.
I would agree
Spielberg
with that.
Movies, I wouldn't even put it in the top 10 for watchability, just because this is not something you're going to want to, hey, let's sit down and have a night watching Schindler's List. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a Spielberg movie would be more like E.T., where it's kind of personal to him at a family level.
Uh-huh.
Or even stuff like Jurassic Park.
So I think something important with this movie is that, again, we do have levity in places, specifically with Schindler here, like Schindler being the ladies' man that he is interviewing all these secretaries. And this is great editing.
So many
really
freaking girls in this movie. It's insane. It's ridiculous.
Again, he was a chauvinist and a ladies' man, and he's just, again, very much a James Bond to an extent, where he's just all these women. Again, he seemed like getting closer and closer to the secretaries, and then we just cut to the one who's the most competent for the job, but not as easy on the eyes. And of course, I just love this runner where we saw in the Nazi scene earlier on with all the photographs being taken. Again, it's kind of what Sandy was speaking to, with it's kind of where history meets documentation, meets photography, and meets kind of the history books. And we kind of have we get to see history kind of being made as the film is going on, with all these photographs being taken. Again, all these, the flashes of all these girls, and of course the flashing of lights. Of course, Spielberg goes nuts for lights, spotlights and such. Yeah. And again, I'll agree with you. That absolutely is a movie directed by Steven Spielberg, but we do have Spielberg touches, mainly in the first act.
And you see, I guess it's not fair to compare this to Private Ryan, but I guess the thing that I think I'm more likely to sit down and rewatch Private Ryan more, just because I feel like Private Ryan has more of the Spielbergian flair to this. Well, it's very intentional, obviously, that this doesn't have a lot of Spielbergian flair. This is basically Spielberg deconstructed. I mean, speaking of which, are there even very many daddy issue themes in this movie?
There are two. There are two thematic things with daddy issues. One's more thematic. The other one is a line that is a direct daddy issues thing.
Okay.
I guess we'll get there when we get there. It's a scene with Emily. I believe when we meet Schindler's wife, that he kind of the wife or fiance that later on he'll commit to. So we'll get there when we get there.
Oh.
So again, this is stuff I'm talking about too. Again, aside from just my gushing over hey, here's the Spielberg thing of just people evolving methods and figuring things out. I do love the whole again, how how Schindler strategically uses friendship as a way he can manipulate friendships, that he's cultivated a bond and a trust with the Nazis. Again, hence the photograph from earlier right here. How he's using this to his advantage, where he can get kind of breaks cut for him if he runs into issues. And then, of course, later on when he gets arrested, he will have kind of a get out of jail free card thanks to all like he's made friends with the right people, like friends in high places, sort of thing. And nothing wasted. All those photographs we just saw on the screen just now.
It's been kind of interesting to figure out how he got involved with all this to begin with. Like, how he got involved with the Nazi Party to begin with. I mean, it's not really important to the story as it's being told, but it'd just be kind of interesting to find out.
The interesting thing with Schindler is that one thing I know about him is that he was a failed businessman. The only time he was a successful businessman, he had the vigor of the businessman. The problem was the business always crumbled or something went wrong until the war. The war was like the X factor for him. Like it was a time where people were desperate and they needed things and they couldn't really. He was like he's the salesman who can close a deal essentially. And the war is kind of like the big, like, okay, you need this, therefore you have to deal with Schindler.
If he's Ray Kroc and the war was his McDonald's.
Essentially, yes.
Basically, he's the guy who can sell an igloo to an Eskimo.
Sure.
Yeah, that's kind of a very shallow comparison.
Oh, come on, that was a great movie, though.
No, he's comparing the war to McDonald's.
I'm trying to keep things light, Sandy.
Right, so, by the way, I love thematically that, I guess a little bit visual too. It's just this great kind of symbol of the drink here, where the symbol of their friendship is when Stern will finally take the drink and acknowledge like the thanks and like Schindler's trying to cultivate a friendship here, and again, you get a sense that he likes this guy, but he needs this guy, so it's not exactly a full-blown friendship. And the idea of the movie is that he's going to cultivate like a true blue friendship with Stern. And that's going to develop over the movie. But the drink is the thing that's going to solidify that. So until Stern takes that drink, that's like when he reciprocates the friendship, the signals of friendship that Schindler's putting out.
Uh-huh.
Of course, it's very kind of Playboy 101. You need a nice robe. We got that with old Oscar here. Of course, Schindler's just the guy who, and again, I think something, I don't know if this is just like the way they kind of used to kind of make it a little bit more cinematic. I don't know if it went down 100% like this, but I do like the idea that Schindler's a guy who he can't commit to the one relationship, and the whole movie is about him making a big commitment where he'll do things like that are the right thing, but he won't acknowledge himself as a hero, and that's the big idea of the movie. And we kind of see that in his personal life with his relationship here with kind of his Mrs. Schindler here, of course, will later on be officially Mrs. Schindler. Like I think they're actually married, but they're separated. I think that's kind of what I think it's what they kind of imply with the movie here, but it's like they have a really open, like, oh, I can't be with you if you're not gonna, if I have to worry about other Mrs. Schindlers.
It's like, okay, bye then. That's one of my favorite edits in the movie, by the way. Like, we think it's going to be like a very kind of personal moment of change for Schindler, but instead it's just like, nope, cut to the train, goodbye.
Right, here's the daddy issue thing. Here's the one line of dialogue. It's the daddy issues where the idea is like his father had 50 workers and he has 350 workers. So there's a bit of surpassing the father in there with that line. And that implies that's where Schindler's original drive is coming from, that he wants to be a businessman he wants to surpass his father as a businessman.
Good form, Steven.
Yes, and of course, and thematically, the big idea is that he becomes the patriarch, kind of the father figure to all the Schindler Jews, or the Schindler Juden, if you want to be all technical about it.
Right, that's definitely, and of course, like the symbolism of the girl in the red coat, which obviously we'll get into.
Oh yeah, oh my God, it's gonna be great when we get there.
Yeah, it's gonna be wonderful, Dragon. I'm not sure if great is the best word to describe that scene,
but it's really well made. It's well done.
Oh. Folks, let's just say like that scene, of course the famous liquidation scene, kind of building to that as we plow through Act 1. It took me about 2 days after that scene to kind of finish the rest of the movie because I was so shaken by it. I was like, oh my God, and we haven't even gone to the concentration camp yet. This movie's intense. This movie's hardcore.
Yep. Not exactly, kind of. It's basically it's intense in a moment, as the entire film of Dunkirk is.
Yeah, but Dunkirk to me, there's kind of like a bit of a separation to it because it's like Christopher Nolan playing with his time sandbox. Whereas this movie has, I think the documentary style and the black and white and everything just makes it much more heavy hitting because it's very much like you're watching stock footage. It's like a home video, you know what I mean? And as I keep saying, I think I'm going to keep repeating this point, but it bears repeating. It wouldn't be as impactful if you didn't see the Jewish community in a place of somewhat comfort in the first act of the movie, in a place of like, okay, this is a bad situation, but at least we're together. At least our lives aren't being threatened. It's basically just poor living conditions. And then as the movie goes on, it's just like, nope, we're going to strip all that away from you. And, you know, just feeling that lack of humanity. I forget what my original point even was. I'm sorry. I'm just like
real quick.
You're right.
Real quick, just with the relationship stuff with Emily here, I do like that visually we're saying all we need to say with like minimal dialogue. We have minimal dialogue, but importantly, we see what we need to see. So it's kind of it's not doing it's not an overkill, I guess is the word. You know, it's not. It's like we see him while he's dancing with her. He's looking at other women. They're smiling back at him, and of course, she's asking the big question here. Hence your favorite cut coming up here, which is a really great cut, and it speaks to the fact that, again, I love this thematically and how it parallels with Goethe, where Oskar Schindler is played as a character who will not change, and that's what we kind of say with this cut in a comedic way of like, oh well, that Oskar Schindler, he's not going to change.
It's Oskar Schindler,
which will lead to kind of the big surprise of the movie, where oh my god, Oskar Schindler, he's changing. What do you know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is a great scene here. Oh my god, I mean, folks, you're gonna hear us. That's kind of like that's the drinking game of this movie. You're like, oh, this is a great scene. Yeah, Schindler's playing along. Look at him.
It's kind of interesting how it's kind of interesting like how they play it up. It's like, you know, this guy's a Nazi. Obviously, you're not supposed to like Nazis, but you kind of like the guy. Almost, he's like kind of like that lovable rogue kind of guy.
Yeah, to be fair, Nazi sympathizer. But again, I'd say it only because it's an important delineation that he's not too in bed with these guys. Just he's profiting off them. He isn't believing them.
Well, I mean, but still.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Absolutely, yes, I agree with you.
He kind of does admit later in the movie that he's a member of the Nazi Party.
Sure, but, you know, like he's running the function, so he's there. You know, like he's the guy who's like he's buying the food, like he's buying the tables and chairs. That's Schindler at the Nazi Party. So yeah, so our one-armed man. This is I love this idea.
Oh god, this was haunting. This was another thing that was hard to watch.
This is really like the scene later is like that's really like the first scene where you're like, oh, that's that kind of movie.
Yeah, pretty much. Like throughout the first half hour or so, it's still sort of just kind of getting the wheels into play. That's the thing with this movie. This movie has a ridiculous sort of like it's got a prologue and an epilogue to it, I would say. And not a short prologue or epilogue either.
And yet it doesn't overstay its welcome.
Uh-huh.
So the one-armed man, it's a great idea because I love that it's overt. You know, this is the thing that begins. It's the beginning of the end. The one-armed man is the thing that begins, it unleashes the chaos, and that it opens suspicion and endangers the business. It's an example of the right thing versus Schindler's self-interest here. And everyone. That's thing like it's a very overtly. How is this guy an essential worker? And again, we played off a little comedically before, and of course has a really devastating punchline at the end there, where again, like this little, it's an innocent gag where Schindler was saying, okay, that Schindler still has a way to go. Where he's like, how is this guy essential? What are you doing to me here? And of course, it's like back and forth, like he's very useful. Ow! What do you mean he's useful? and of course, like this man saying, "Oh, you Oskar Schindler, you saved my life. You are a good man." It's a very important idea that we set up there, and of course. There's a harsh tragedy where later on we have this really interesting line that I think rewatching you have set up here where Oskar Schindler, there's an argument to be made that before Schindler does the big thing that he does, the list of it all, he is kind of poisoning these people with hope until he does something that matters. An argument could be made that that Goethe might technically be right, that he is kind of poisoning them with hope, or this guy, you're giving a one-armed man the job in a job where the Nazis are going to stop by, and someone's going to notice this, and you you gave him a job, and you gave him a job at like the worst in the worst position. If you're found out, that could be the end of this guy, and you gave him hope only to be killed where he inevitably would have been killed at this time. So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
With the shoveling, I love how this scene's edited, by the way, how we have it like, but we don't know the punchline, but we're seeing it unfold before our eyes. Is like, that's what's motivating this conversation that Schindler's having. Of basically, we learned the Nazis have the final say. Like, they're saying, because it's the war, you guys clear a path for us in the snow. Like, we're gonna take all your workers, despite the fact that we like you. We have final say, which means, hey, you guys serve our cause, then you get back to your cause. And yeah.
Sorry, I'm just kind of interrupting, but I just like I like all the contrast, like the blacks and the whites, and especially the coats against the snow.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I'm just sorry. I'm just
right.
kind of ruining the moment, aren't I?
No. Here's the big moment going up here,
and that's when I realized. I mean, that's when you first begin to realize, oh, this movie's not pulling any punches. I mean, gone is like the stylized action and concepts of like Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is like real brutality.
Yes, and here's this moment is a perfect example of the difference here, where because it's in black and white, because it's just stark black and white, you're seeing darkness on top of white pure snow. What you're showing here is that, again, in color, this would have been gratuitous. It would have been, okay, we're just doing something gruesome and gory and stuff. In reality, it's black and white and haunting. It imprints more. Again, it's a little like. It's like an ink blot test. It's like a Rorschach test where, black and white sticks in your mind. Black and white is something that, again, you just kind of boil down. It's kind of the basic necessities of where we kind of stem from color. And you just boil it down to just that simplicity, and it shows you, okay, we're looking for the gray in Oscar Schindler. Like, can we go from black to white? That's kind of what we explore with Oscar Schindler. Like, can we do that through a gray character? Like, can we kind of meet in the middle and just kind of like, we examine the gray, but the majority of it is just kind of it's stark realities, black and white.
Yeah.
So coming up here, oh my god, I adore this scene too. Again, sorry, folks, drinking game. But, yeah, oh my god, this is a great scene here.
If we take a drink for every, if we took a shot for every great scene in this movie, we'd be dead by Act 2.
Yep.
To quote the movie, our livers would explode like hand grenades.
Oh God.
Pretty much. Yeah, so we see, I love the connective tissue of like connecting the dots of Schindler's Ark, where we're seeing the line and the values of Stern, and in this scene here, basically we have kind of Schindler versus the Nazis list. And again, the list is like an important thematic thing here, where it's all about lists and kind of Schindler using that to his advantage. Or if you write a name on a piece of paper down, you tell someone something bad's going to happen. That's the whole like almost psychological warfare of the Holocaust there, where it's like, hey, it's all about list and bureaucracy, and like your number could be up the minute it's written down on a piece of paper. It's it's like his own power move here, just like taking it down and saying, okay, you'll be in okay, gentlemen, I guarantee you'll be in southern Russia by the end of the week.
And then that's what gets them to comply. It's like he's definitely a people person. He knows how to play people.
And I think you could read into it. And again, I don't think Schindler's quite there yet, where he truly he does. He's not just blustering himself.
I feel like at this point he's basically just like, oh crap, they're taking my best employee away. I can't operate without my best employee.
I think it's that, like, he needs Stern as an employee, but at the same time, I think he just has a rapport with him too, where he's it's like a one-sided friendship. I kind of like the guy too, where I don't want this to happen to him, and I need him as an accountant. So I think he's acknowledging at least that he has a preference for him. And of course, Stern on the train. This is I just love the mythic nature of the scene where Oscar Schindler stopped the train. That's a mythic moment. Where you stop again, this big symbol that we're building up again. This is the Jaws build, Tiki. We're building up the Auschwitz.
Actually, yeah, I think more appropriately, the trains are probably the shark.
Sure, and yeah, it's I guess yeah, I think at the end of the day, you're right. It's kind of the trains and the smokestack. Those are kind of the big Jaws-y elements of it. Yeah.
It's still hard to believe that this came out in the same year as Jurassic Park.
Amazing. And of course, again, even there's a bit of comedy in this scene too, where he's saying, he freaks these guys out into helping him again because Schindler's just so confident, he knows exactly what he's doing. And again, what we're doing so cleverly and so step by step is that we're melding them together. Where again, we're in the bon vivant. Say, okay, that Oscar Schindler is such a compelling character. I want to see what this guy does next. Mixed with trains. I think I know where this is going. You're mixing together like yes. Again, very, very powerful. Stopping that train. Of course, here's another great, Jaws. Again, more of a thematic thing, less Jaws, more thematic setup is the baggage and one of the most haunting images. You'll see this almost every Holocaust museum you go to. You'll see this in the piles and piles of clothing and possessions, and the fact that it's like a simple idea that again I know it's kind of a no-brainer now, but back then might have been kind of like a wake-up call to some people, where it's like, hey, the people are getting on trains, but their luggage is not being put on the train. I.e., something smells rotten in Denmark.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we're seeing exactly what's going on here. Again, one of the most haunting shots, the eyeglasses to me. That the eyeglasses and the teeth. Of course, the teeth being a big full circle thing that pays off later with Schindler's Ring. Hey, Sandy, there are your photographs.
I mean, that's just like family memories being discarded from just pure malice, basically.
Very directly, we have some photographs in the movie too, so that's all relative.
And I think one of the most haunting elements of the way that the brutality in this movie is presented is the fact that it's literally just day-to-day labor for these fucking people. It's just like okay, like I work at a thrift store, right? So storage is an issue for us. So as we get into it, it's literally just like, oh, we've got a new shipment of donations coming in. We got to clear room for the other donations. And they apply that day-to-day mundanity of working a 9-to-5 job to human lives. And it's just absolutely sickening. And they just don't care. And they're chumming around on the job. And they're joking with each other. And they're just living up the high life. And it's just, it's disgusting in the best of ways.
And of course, with those gold fillings, it's like the Jews are essentially they're being tasked with things by the Nazis, and in doing so, they're going through their own victims. It's like, hey, these gold fillings once belonged to a whole person, and like, oh, it's like it's mounting casualties already. Again, without even seeing a body yet.
Well,
again, aside from the one-armed man,
it's like simple brutality.
Yeah. And again, here I like that I love the Jews can take shots at the kind of the promoted Jews who are basically their middle management for the Nazis, and they could take shots at them, just kind of rock them like, oh yeah, this guy, it's like because they know we knew you're not so special. And believe it or not, I was watching this documentary on Netflix called The Last Laugh, which is all about humor, and it's framed around a survivor. A survivor kind of explained where the line is between what kind of jokes you can make, and then there was a whole segment about Holocaust jokes. And what's interesting is that again we can have a balance here, and again survivors do have a sense of humor, believe it or not. They can even find because you had to find light in these horrible situations. So again, there were. You could have moments like that where you're taking shots at the guy in middle management because you can get away with him because what else did you have to lose? Why not? I mean, if you're, it's so horrifying and tragic, but at the same time, yet there was a twisted, mangled bright side.
I'm curious. I'm sorry. I'll bring it up later because it's kind of hard. So Dragon, I remember during Bridge of Spies, you were teasing me that a character having a cold was going to come back.
This is it, yes.
Yep. And oh my God, what a compare and contrast, right? Like this guy and Tom Hanks.
Well, I say that because Spielberg specifically, he came up with this on the day. He said, "Okay, act like you have a cold." He told that to Ralph Fiennes on the day, and I thought it was just what he did so cleverly with this is that what he did with this character, we're going to make the most scary Nazi you've ever seen, but in doing that, what we're going to do, we're going to humanize him with all this mundanity. He has a cold and he hates his job. Like he hates the bureaucracy. Like he loves to kill people, but he hates bureaucracy.
Like there was like a There was actually a survivor of the Holocaust, actually a couple who consulted on this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, there's actually he actually met Ralph Fiennes in costume, and he shook because he looked exactly like Goth did in real life.
Wow! Oh my God, that's horrifying.
It's like obviously he knew it wasn't him, but just the memory of him came back, because he just basically the spitting image.
That's the thing. I mean, they did cast really well because Neeson, again, he's a little less hair. I mean, a little more, he has more hair than the real Schindler. But again, they're pretty on the money. At least I could see that from Schindler's side of things. It doesn't surprise me they cast it that well. If I'm being honest, yeah. So Helen Hirsch. Now, of course, she has a horror. Sorry, I don't mean to just keep saying horrifying because that'd be kind of defeating the point. She has a really tragic story in this. And again, she's kind of the well-edited sequence I was talking about, which we'll get to, where she has like a really Helen Hirsch, she's just kind of this very pitiable character. She just doesn't want to die in the cold. Essentially, it's like she doesn't. And in doing so, she goes with Amon Goth because if she says no, he might just shoot her there on sight. Because Goth, he plays mind games like you wouldn't believe. And oh my God, there's this one sequence where he plays the most. Like he has a one-sided conversation, and I know it sounds like what's so scary about a one-sided conversation? Believe me, you'll see.
It's pretty much the scariest one-sided conversation in this entire movie.
Yeah. So again, Goth, he's just this really interesting comparison, like counterpoint to the Schindler, where he had to recruit women, and later on, like he's very, he's hands-on, he's very abusive towards women, and he has to recruit them instead of where they flock to Oscar Schindler. He smiles at them, and they're his, and has to, as Helen Hirsch, like, hey, you want to come with me? So this moment here, this sums up Goth, and this is like a great introduction to this character. If you need to sum up like the mirthlessness and just kind of it's a guy almost with a god complex, where he has like his, he's all about power and ego. This guy, where he'll listen to the new and good ideas, and of course later on he listens to like a new idea that Schindler presents to him, and he believes it, and he thinks it's a good idea, but in doing so, he just can't shake the violence here. Where again, he can't change his Schindler initially can't change, his attentiveness to business and money. And again, he's not about power; he's about money. Where Goth is all about, well, she challenged me, she said something to me, and she's a lesser person. Therefore, I'm going to blow her away, and I'm going to do exactly what she told us to do because it was a smart call. Again, he's like this killer enigma in a way of like, oh my God, it's like this guy he's kind of all about humanity. Where again, he has human problems. He has in a perverse world, you could see him as a likable character, but he's just such a monster, And
again, this is toned down from the real version.
I know, that's unbelievable. Just you saying that, I'm just thinking, oh my God, how do you get any worse than this guy?
I've read a couple things about it. It's like pretty much.
I believe you. I'm just saying that's just news to me. That's all.
Because a lot of people several critics even talked about how they thought it was nobody could be that bad. Apparently he was even worse in real life.
This is a line that's really haunting. These are the things that stuck out to me on a really in-depth reviewing of the movie. Is these great lines in these speeches that I kind of forgot about because again you're so swept up in what's happening. It's just the really clever, scary line here where it's those 6 centuries, basically the 6 centuries where Krakow was it was a Jewish party town. Those 6 centuries are a rumor. They never happened.
Yeah, this is kind of
those are lines that make the movie.
Yeah, we get that lighter moment with the history teacher, how am I not essential? I am a history professor. But then this is just kind of that moment kind of coming to sheer brutal clarity, it's just that's what I'm saying. We need to build up some form of hope for the Jewish community, which is the togetherness of being in this situation. And then we strip it away, and that's where the movie really gets. It's like an hour-long prologue. I'm saying this whole Act 1 is basically a prologue to what goes down the rest of the movie. And it like I said, I'm sorry, I feel like I keep repeating the same point, but it's it makes it all the more gut-wrenching.
I see your prologue point, Tiki. By the same token, it just feels like it could be like a bombastic Act 1, though, where again you think, okay, Act 1 it's ended, and we're just kind of going about business as usual. Then of course we introduce Amon Goth, and that's where basically we blow up Act 1, and we're coming back from that for the rest of the movie. So basically, the liquidation scene has essentially it's commencing right now as we're
And guys, I'm sorry. This is going to be one of those I've already watched this twice. I can't watch it again. I'm going to have to avert my eyes from this shit.
Well, speak to make that relevant here, especially. I just want to drop that. Of course, doing the whole documentary style, the goal was to again be in this scene specific. This is where the whole documentary quality comes alive, and we're shaking the camera when we're on the ground with what's happening as it's happening. It was Spielberg intended for this to be completely unwatchable, and it was so unwatchable to a point where Spielberg in the edit bay with Michael Kahn, they reached the point where, especially Spielberg, he just I can't watch this. I don't know how I'm going to be able to edit this. They just kind of realized.
Yeah, I think that point got brought up either off air or on air by one of us. Like, how the hell did Spielberg edit this movie?
Great difficulty again, like Robin Williams on speed dial. Like Robin, I don't know. Oh my god, Ron, I want to gouge my eyes out here. You got to help me out. Like, put you on speakerphone. Help me out here. So I remember, I forget who said this, but I was watching that Spielberg documentary, and they someone says like beautifully orchestrated chaos. And the fun fact is, at least from what I heard, is that Spielberg, again, because this is so hard to direct and so hard to bring to life, and again, without his family there, he wouldn't have been able to do this movie. By the way, without his family there, just kind of, kind of getting him through the nights on this project. I believe that he would not be able to complete. It'd be like one of those like films that were started that were never finished if he did not have like those release valves like that in the animation and the Seinfeld and the whole shebang. Like Spielberg, what he did is he set up the shots for a lot of this chaos. Like again, the cinematic stuff, that's all Spielberg, but this is like he set up like what needs to happen. But in certain, like I'm not sure how, because again, it turned out so well. I mean, so brutal and so true to life. But we have these moments of. I absolutely get the whole beautifully orchestrated chaos where like someone runs away and another person gets shot. It's like a tango of death in a way. It's like it's horrifying.
And another thing I just kind of noticed as watching this, like adding to the documentary feel, like a lot of the different scenes I like get inconsistent qualities too. Like some of them are blurrier than others.
Something I completely forgot. There are two things I completely forgot that blew me away. One, the whole bread thing. I completely forgot about the bread thing where they ate their jewels to, as like a less thing. It's like saving your valuables. You put them in the bread and you eat them. It's like a whole like swallow your valuables type thing. I'm just seeing it like in that gritty sense. And this thing creeped me out so much where the German actors, again, this must have been really trippy for them shooting this in the 90s especially, but they captured that turn. The scary thing about the Germans, at least with Nazis historically, they really brought to the forefront here is there was that turn on a dime quality where the Nazi he was like, oh, what a cute little kid. And then he went back to, okay, shoo. After like he has a soft spot for kids, but by the same token, it's like he's following orders, business as usual. And it's like, oh my God, that turn on a dime quality, that's horrifying.
Right, yeah.
I mean, Spielberg had this great analogy where the way he kind of approached the way he kind of thought of the brutality was, the Nazis treated human life like napkins. It was like,
I mean, I can't disagree with that.
Again, like your days could be numbered on it, just depending on how a guy felt or if he had a quota to meet. That's this is absolutely Jake. You're absolutely right. This is the horror movie section of the film. So many points like coming up here, like when we go into the sewer, and especially when we come out of the sewer here. When we jump around to see like kind of various kind of like, again, it's kind of a cacophony of just like of horribleness where, when they all kind of, we intercut like all these bad things happening. Like when we come up from the sewer, we see like, all this empty luggage on the streets. And that's kind of the saving grace of that one guy. We'll get, I'm jumping ahead. We'll get there when we get there. But like Stern here, again, we see characters that we know. And again, you kind of have to walk the streets to work. You can't just be in the factory. Like they're rounding people up. So you have to be on the streets or else you risk being hunted down. Again, this is what I'm talking about, the beautifully orchestrated chaos here, where you turn left with the camera in that shaky documentary style, and then of course, bang, and it's like, oh my God, and then so you're running for your life. And again, there's some other horrific stuff I'm trying to skirt by here because again, it's just some things you just don't want to talk about.
Yeah. Just the sheer brutality of it is just,
certainly.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, this was.
It's almost kind of like this thing where it's almost like you want to look away, but you can't look away.
Oh, I can look away. I'm gladly looking away right now. Sure.
And also, again, with
looking away with la da 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 da. I'm in my own little world right now.
Okay. You might want to plug yours for this brief bit here, because this one we have to talk about. So,
oh, we can talk about it all we want. I just don't want to see it.
All right, good then. Okay, fine. Just want to make sure. I just want.
Yeah. No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, this thing too here is like this is like an example of we're going to play with the idea of mercy later on. Here we have this nurse who's basically kind of doing like the euthanasia on these the sick Jews in bed here. Where we have our Nazis coming up there, and basically the hope is that the whatever chemical or toxic, I'm trying to think, whatever thing that they've injected into the water, into the shots here, they're going to put them out of their misery before the Nazis are going to come by and kind of blow them while they're in bed. And it's gruesome too. Like we don't, I love how we're using everything here. Where again, like Spielberg with the blood, we have kind of like that little. It's like a realistic spurt like you've never seen, where like people land on the ground.
I want to talk about that. The headshots in this movie are so goddamn realistic.
I still have never seen a headshot. Like, we go overboard with the headshots. We go spectacular with it. Like we see like pieces, like it's like scanners. We always emulate scanners with a head explosion, like a bullet going through the head. This is like realistic, where it's like it's darkness on pavement, and it's just like you can see the special effect, but you don't care because it's executed so. Like, there's always like an arterial spurt, and it's always like kind of like pumping out on the ground and pulling up. It's like there's like a tube there that you're not seeing. There's a tube there, but again, you don't care.
Oh.
You never see that sort of thing. It's like, yeah, I mean, he's not afraid to relish in it because he knows people are going to be so sold on it. It's like they're.
I wonder how long it took them to get these scenes right. Like if they like all did it at once, or like it's just like.
I guess it took them too long. I mean, any point you have to any extra time you have to dedicate to shooting this, it's going to be murder for the guy shooting this. It's going to be, oh my god, it's like the worst day of shooting every day, I imagine, on something like this. Oh, here's Spielberg with flashlights and lighting here again. The black and white complements everything so well. We have like that smoky kind of gray quality in the air, and just it's just pure light and darkness here.
And not to mention the black and white actually amplifies the ricochet of the bullets.
Yes, the muzzle. I'm so glad you brought that up. So here, and especially in the apartment scene coming up, I love the muzzle flashes. Where again, we had Schindler with having his photograph taken. We have like the flash of the light bulb, and then we juxtapose that later on here with that was like the Happy Good Times, where now we have it's like the muzzle flashes where again it's like a strobe light effect, but it's a strobe light effect where it's like, okay, pictures aren't being taken, lives are being lost off screen. You're not even seeing the carnage, but you can feel it. We kind of have a hope. By the way, I love this. So our little girl here, Danka. So I love how we have a few characters. My only issue with the movie, honestly, it's a very minor thing. It doesn't bug me about it at all. It's just I do know some of our characters, like the Black Market guys. We don't really name them in the movie. I kind of wish we kind of named them because they kind of helped save the day.
Honestly, Dragon, I kind of feel like that's a Dunkirk quality.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why it doesn't bother me because it's like really it's kind of a blink and you miss it thing, and we get what they did, but we do have certain characters that we do imprint on, like Danka here. It's like the little girl with the glasses and her mother, like Danka, and we see Danka because that's how we identify with the glasses. We give him like these specific characteristics, and like the only other one that we give a name is the one who gave us the movie. Technically, it's Poldek. Again, Poldek, the guy who wanted to get the Oscar Schindler story told, so he's a character in the movie. And again, this thing here is a scary thing. I think this is probably the deepest cut in the Spielberg's life right here. This moment here where this poor guy here, he's stacking the luggage, and kind of he's being the fool for the Nazis' amusement here. And what he's doing is essentially, I would imagine, Spielberg being bullied, whether or not purely being bullied for being Jewish or just being bullied, just because he was a young guy who was kind of a Jewish kid in a non-Jewish neighborhood. I don't know. But basically, it's that bully mentality. If you make them laugh, you live another day. That's essentially what we do in this scene. It's like a realistic kind of like kid bullying thing.
Like, this is a bit off subject, but how would it be to be one of the kids and realize you bullied Steven Spielberg as a kid? Well,
if you're really like a bully who's learned nothing in life, then I guess you're going to be proud of that. Like, hey, I bullied Steven Spielberg. I'm somewhat important.
I contributed to Schindler's List.
Oh man. Oh man.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm sorry.
No,
That was a bit out of line.
So
I
this
do
is
like
sweet.
this. I do love this little kid though.
Such a
Yeah, like
great
the-
actor.
Is it now or later that we get the toilet scene?
No, it's later on. That one's the one I can't watch. That's later on.
Yeah, I can't watch that either. That's just like, okay, I think that's probably the most disturbing imagery in the whole movie.
I can watch everything in this movie, but that's the one thing I'm going to be blinking through the most.
There's one for me too. I mean, like mainly not like based. There's kind of one for me too, not just based on the imagery, but like more the implications more than anything else.
Oh, sure, I'd buy that. Yeah, there's a lot of things by implication that are just horrifying in this movie too.
I mean, I'll point it out when we get to it, but it's not like we're like way down in the movie though.
Sure. Okay, here. Well, then we started here. We don't do the big payoff because that's kind of the.
Is the scene almost over, guys? It's just like I have.
Well, we're doing the girl in red now, right? We have the girl in red going on right now.
Oh, okay.
So we got to talk about the girl in red. So on it, the girl in red is an actual.
It's back right now. Go ahead.
The girl in red is an actual thing. It wasn't just like an artistic thing that Spielberg did. The girl in red was like an actual like Spielberg looked into this and he found that he did a lot of research on the movie and he found out that Schindler watched all this on horseback. Now, whether this like happened at the same moment, there was reportedly like a little girl in red during all this chaos. And the little girl in red is actually, just by happenstance, she was still alive, and they interviewed her during this. So that was just kind of by sheer coincidence they got the little girl in.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy. They knew the rumors about her, as they knew like if she was actually still around. And like, oh my God, you were a little girl in red? Like, that was kind of mind-blowing to them. And the little girl in red represents the Spielberg is going for here. And he's very proud of this. And I don't blame him. I think it's a great idea because, again, it echoes the color and the safety from earlier on. Specifically, it's the idea of like the world turning a blind eye to the Holocaust, which again, folks, now it's kind of raising up like, how could they ever turn a blind eye to the Holocaust? But again, before this movie, it wasn't like a hugely known thing. If you knew the history books, like then you knew it. But if you didn't, it wasn't like the consciousness. So basically, Schindler this is kind of the whole idea of Schindler like not feeling that he could have done more because he saw this girl and he feels that he could have done more. And like, she's so close to all this great brutality of like men being lined up for sport to be shot, something like that, as this little girl, like just wandering by safely. I mean, that's, it's the innocence mixed in with like a sea of chaos.
And there are some scenes where she doesn't even have where she's not even colored in.
Well, that's a very strategic point. Just what we're going to have coming up here. I believe it's coming up, if not in this moment. Like we did in the opening, color is kind of that safety. Like color is that hope and optimism. Where what we do with her right now, you look. She's in color, but we drain the color away the minute she hides under the bed. Color's drained away, therefore she is not safe. Therefore her fate is sealed.
So you said she survived in real life?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, they had testimony for her, so that I think she survived in real life.
But it's kind of just funny that kind of a spoiler, but it shows like her dead later in this movie.
It does. I'll admit that might have been a liberty they took. I'm going to say somehow they got her testimony, which I'm just assuming means she's alive. It could have been. I
admit it could have been just like a very personal, like a narrative liberty they took. Basically, like to amplify the horror of the situation.
Yeah. And just a liberty. It is a hell of a liberty because I would say the girl in the red dress is like probably the most famous bit of Spielberg's symbolism is in his entire filmography.
If I'm right, later on, what we do with the end credits is.
From what I remember, it's like. That scene is like studied in film schools, basically. Where the girl in the red coat, like maybe not necessarily in film schools, but like shows like this is like Spielberg at his zenith.
Yeah. No, I mean it's definitely studied in film schools. I can probably attest to that.
Yeah, I can attest to it too.
Yeah.
But But yeah, it's well, that's the thing. So in the end, the reason I'm convinced that I didn't misread that is that later on, when the end, when we have kind of our real life counterparts with the actors, we have the little girl and she's next to an old woman. So that makes me believe, unless they just like got someone else who's like who saw this girl, like was somehow like maybe related to the mother of this girl. I don't know. The point is like this little girl had some sort of like some ancestry of some kind. Was
This isn't one of the scenes I was talking about, but this is actually horrifying too. Like the muzzle flashes in the background while the guy's playing piano.
Oh my god! I love and hate the guy playing piano. Like I love it just because it represents the sheer evil of the Nazi Party and just the cockiness. But obviously I hate it because it's just like you just want to just be like, come on, what is your problem, guy? You're literally like you're celebrating. You just want to grab these people and shake them.
well, again, Tiki, it's that whole like the bully thing. If you want to live for another day, you're hoping to just kind of like if you're going down with a ship like the Titanic, you want to play music and maybe you'll live.
And what I really like, one thing I also like about this scene is that like it basically amplifies what Spielberg learned when making Jaws. Sometimes it's scarier what you don't see.
Yeah. So again, this to me is the end of Act One, where we have the dark mundanity of Goth. This again, it's kind of a dark joke of the whole of all this Goth stuff. Is he after all of this, after all this horror that we just seen, like he's on the outside just kind of chilling out, and he's saying, "Oh, I wish this night were over." That's a thing. It's like, oh my god, like that's an amazing. Like, oh my god, you ended Act One perfectly, sir. You know, give this man an Oscar, that sort of thing.
Yeah, essentially, like it's a night that lived on forever.
Yeah. Of course, the very effective imagery of again, like the empty factory with all the pots and pans, where again Schindler's kind of left without his workforce, and definitely something's going to need to be done. And so now I don't know a whole lot about Amon Goth about the real guy. But what I do know is that this is something he actually did. Though he did the whole the sniper thing that he does here, which is just psychotic and scary. And I gotta tell you, on a rewatch, Amon Goth, you know what he reminds me of? He kind of reminds me of he's kind of Bullseye-esque from from Daredevil. He's very like Bulls. If they can capture like a tenth of this guy in the Daredevil season 3, when they're going to have Bullseye, I mean, that'd be remarkable. Because in the comics, Bullseye, he's a guy who enjoys killing. Where Deadpool's a guy who enjoys like killing people for the money. He doesn't enjoy killing people. He enjoys the money and the adventure and like the occupation. Bullseye's a character who just enjoys, killing people because he has a screw loose and he's psychotic, which is why guys like Daredevil hate him. Like he just kills people for killing people sick, and he can show off, hey, I killed people one shot. And this is just Goth, just like, hey, I'm just gonna blow people away because so they make them work faster on board.
And it really does kind of speak to the whole there's no rhyme or reason to the killings pretty much from this point on. It's just like, and that's where the horror of this movie comes into play.
They did capture it. Sorry.
No, it's very... Yeah.
I was gonna say, as Hurst points out later, it's like he just shoots people just for the fun of it. Basically, it's like it's just like a big game.
And it's very much, you get the sense, of course, that like, okay, it's a day-to-day struggle for survival from this point forward. Like we've gone from uncomfortable living conditions to just like, we will be lucky to stay alive.
Yeah. Where it's, I mean, it's Goth. What he's doing here is I was trying to remember what my point was. I was going for something with this. Oh yes. So, Jay, we did actually we do bridge the like a bit of a whole killing people, like killing someone before breakfast idea here, where he is talking about like coffee and everything right after this sequence. I think it's the closest we get to the whole breakfast thing. They even reference that in some capacity, which is kind of creepy.
I think it was Sandy that brought that up, but yeah, you are right. It's like he doesn't even phase him, and he just like even takes it into his room with him.
We do have kind of again, it's everything done with purpose here, folks. So I'm gonna read into it a little bit here. We have kind of like almost like a Shape of Water, like Michael Shannon bit here with the bathroom here, where again it's a dominance and power thing, where he just the door's wide open as he's kind of doing his business here, like commanding the woman to make him coffee. So again, there's definitely like that. There's a machismo with Goethe as well, and we do actually, in a way that we look into kind of masculinity and relationships in Shape of Water, we do look into it here with how Goethe, he basically has a Frollo arc in this movie. He really does have a Frollo
yes,
story.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Yeah, I was like waiting for the right time to bring that up.
We'll definitely get into that later. I'm just saying, I like how we're slowly building that. He has like a. We'll get to that later. I want to get into all of it now. It's really fascinating.
Pretty much the only difference and thematically in these movies between Goethe and Frollo is that Frollo has a musical number. This guy does not.
Pretty much. Schindler's List, the musical.
Oh God!
It's the sequel to Springtime for Hitler. It's the one that's like it's sweeping the nation. People are going to go nuts. Yeah, we're looking for a sequel to Springtime for Hitler. Look no further. Schindler's List.
Okay.
Oh God!
This could get very inappropriate very quickly. So let's.
Let's just stop
listening today. Okay, anyway.
Oh God.
Okay, seriously, back on point. Okay, we're done there. Okay. Okay, so this is
the line.
Right, of course. You'll walk right up to the line, but we won't cross that line, certainly. Of course not. So again, this is great. Again, I love Schindler problem solving here. Again, he's using his friendships and it's kind of the carte blanche that he's built up here to crash the meeting and save his business. And in doing so, he meets kind of his new superior in Goethe. And what he does so cleverly is he strikes up a partnership. Basically, he kind of goes almost 50-50. Basically, because Goethe now has the run of the place, which means he has final say even more so than the Nazis already had. And that he's directly supervising. Basically, it's free reign, and now he kind of outranks with Schindler. Schindler was a lot of freedom, but now he has to work with this guy. And if he doesn't build a rapport with this guy, he built a friendship out of necessity. Where again, we have a true
such a dynamic friendship, though, and it's in some weird ways a genuine friendship, and that's what fascinates me about it.
It's like a perverse version of the one we have in Casablanca. It's like where that one's like, these are, it is essentially it's like what if those guys like really like one of them really didn't like the other one, but he worked with them, where the other ones like they actually have like a lifelong like they like the.
What it reminds me of more so? It reminds me of Tyrell Wellick and Elliot in Mr. Robot.
I'll admit I do see a little bit of that more so, but it's kind of a combination between Casablanca and Mr. Robot. I kind of see that more so.
It's just kind of interesting to see her. Like, she has like more of a general. What?
You go on to audio.
Yeah, is everything fine now?
Okay, say something.
Hello.
Oddly enough, Jacob, you went from really loud to really soft.
Why does Google mess with me?
I think it might have adjusted now. I think you might be okay.
How about now?
Yeah, it sounds fine now.
You get like a code word or something, anyway.
Okay, but as I was saying, it's kind of interesting to see that Schindler is like more like a better rapport with Goethe than he actually does with Stern right now.
Yeah, for sure.
And again, it's like a friendship that's forged from one is kind of on a progressive, like genuine place. Where in this case, it's like one guy thinks that he thinks that he's Stern to Schindler, where he thinks he's as close as Schindler will eventually become to Stern. Where he's like, hey, you and I, we're alike, Oscar Schindler. You and I, we're best pals. Like he's giving all the praise, like, oh, that Oscar Schindler, he and I, we go way back. Like, he's saying all the things that he wants Stern to say, but he just does not respect or believe in what this guy believes in. But again, we do see that Schindler later on, he's gonna try to justify his friendship though, because he needs to make, again, this is like a friendship out of necessity, because again, he basically came up with the camp solution here, where basically his factory will be referred to as a camp that Schindler will oversee. But at the same time, again, Goethe will still have a lay of the land, and of course he's going to be using Stern. So I think it's kind of, now I think about it, it's kind of it kind of speaks volumes that with this arrangement, Stern is kept with Goeth, and that Goeth wants to become Stern to Schindler. So it's kind of poetic when you think about that.
Good pull. Good pull.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of and especially when they're partying later on, you're going to see kind of the aggressive drunk versus the bon vivant, where like this guy has he owns the room versus the guy who thinks he owns the room.
That's one of my favorite scenes. I can't wait to get to it.
And again, you definitely see, like we have in his own way too. It's like basically, so again, if there's like an actual kind of like a parody of the Schindler Stern relationship in Goeth and Oscar, you have what Goeth thinks the actual dynamic should be between Schindler and Stern here, where it's like you give the orders, he does what you say, or else you mean business. And that's kind of like, okay, I'm not giving this guy an inch. You do what I say. You screw me over, Count, and you're dead. It's kind of what he's saying to him here, like, hey, I'm no Oscar Schindler. You and we ain't friends. You see that star? Not friends. There's that weird power move he did with the desk too, by the way, where it's like we walked by the guy who's just trying to get the desk, and he's like, no, not yet. I'm still walking through here.
Right.
Here's the cut. Here's like this weird. It's like again like the aggressive ladies man just pulling people. So again, the masculinity is definitely.
I mean, I do think it speaks volumes to Spielberg being a daring filmmaker, because Oscar Schindler was not a perfect individual. He was not even a particularly likable individual. There's a difference between likable and charismatic. He was a charismatic guy. But like, as far as being a humanitarian is concerned, outside of his obvious one big act and his kind of huge sacrifice, before that point in his life, he was pretty much not necessarily a scumbag, but not exactly the guy of the year either.
Certainly. Again, we have great dimension coming up when they have these conversation scenes that really add. There's this big scene there's this big scene between Amon and Oscar that really fleshes out where their characters are and where they could be. And we kind of build to that with a scene between him and Stern. So again, like these three characters are kind of like almost like a friendship triangle of some kind. It's fascinating. So I love this. So this is a great scene that reflects later on in the movie here. So one, I like that in the arc here, Schindler is. He cares about his well-being, again, from a standpoint of I need this guy, from a standpoint of like he's slowly coming to grips with I really do care about this guy, and I know this isn't ideal. This guy's in a very precarious situation that I can't bring him out of, but I'm doing what I can though. So again, he cares about him, and he's kind of taking a leap a little in protecting Stern as much as he humanly can without arising suspicion.
Uh-huh.
By the same token, I love again Schindler. This is what they're doing one-on-one with Schindler here, where again he's boiled down the science of pleasantries and those evolving methods.
Be proud.
Again, it's like the science of pleasantries, and that he had him kind of snoop around and find out these dates and birthdays so he can schmooze over the Nazis and find out the information he needs to. So again, his methods can yet again evolve while in times of crisis. And okay, we can't do production the way we had before. It's like in Catch Me If You Can, we had the old kind of like model plane and Bible flattening way of making a check. Then later on, we're just like, by the end of the movie, we're just completely rerouting actual checks instead of making fake checks. It's kind of that sort of changing methods in time of crisis, like changing occupation, stuff like that. And I guess with Stern too, again, we had the whole list making thing going on here, where like Schindler is he can't write all the names and all the information as fast as Stern is putting it out to him, and later on it's going to be quite the reverse, where Stern's having trouble keeping up with Schindler.
Uh-huh.
Well, here's a scary scene. This is the beginning of the big gun jam scene, Tiki.
Oh my god, yeah. It's not my favorite scene in the movie because it's like the most emotionally powerful or anything. It's just the most Spielbergian in terms of like the horror in this scene is just palatable. The suspense, it's goddamn Hitchcockian.
So the previous scene solidified Stern and Oscar as partners who believe in something. Were like, "Hey, Oscar, even if something happens to me, keep our business afloat." That's essentially what he said in that previous scene. And now we're seeing the state the business is in now, where basically we see Amon's version of Oscar Schindler's dream. Like in Act One, things are going gangbusters for Oscar. Like the factory's going like exactly the way he wants it to. He's making a lot of money. Things are going great. Everyone's kind of moderately happy. And now when this guy comes in, he has his own personal evil version of Schindler's Dream Factory. It's like when he's the foreman, basically he's the Nazi foreman, terrifying and killing people when it strikes his fancy. Like, oh, you made this hinge very, very fast, very impressive. One question: why did it take you? Why is your box so low, huh? If you can make them this fast, why is it not overflowing? It's very scary. It's again like Spielberg. He knows how to do a Nazi interrogator. If we learn anything from Razor the Lost Ark, he knows how to do an interrogation. So we definitely see those seeds that have been planted definitely kind of fully blooming in a movie like this. Where like Spielberg's been he's always been waiting for a chance to tell. I shouldn't say waiting for a chance. I should say he's just been kind of the stars aligned to kind of give an opportunity.
Well, I think he's been waiting for the chance to depict the true evil of Nazis. You know what I mean? In a very cinematic kind of way. Like really,
before he used them in a Saturday morning serial way, where it's like okay, Nazis are our bad guys, and it's iconic and like vaguely ties to history.
Exactly. Basically, with Raiders, it's essentially like, oh, they're wearing swastikas. That's about as we go with it.
Well, any met Hitler once, but guy's autograph and everything. So okay, now this scene here. So this is a fascinating scene. This is the big scene here. So, we have after this hinge mind game, we just have this. This is the darkest joke in the entire film. It is a dark joke in every sense of the word. But again, there's like it's hard to call it a joke. But by the same token, it is like this.
Yeah, I didn't ever see it as a joke, but I'm curious.
I'm just saying, people like in film classes, people have like broken this down. It is technically it's like the darkest joke of like. It's he's trying to kill this guy, but his gun jams and keeps jamming and jamming and jamming, and that's
it's basically a horrific joke.
It's a macabre joke. It's like a joke of the macabre, but by the same token,
it'd be pretty much be known as gallows humor.
Yeah, it's gallows humor, exactly. And
especially considering what's going on in the background without them noticing.
Certainly, and the flip side of it too is that the darker element of it is when it kind of starts. You can look at it as like a macabre gallows, more so gallows humor. By the same token, it is also just this horrible realization of the napkin valued life of people here, where basically this poor guy has to live with the fact that God kind of smiled on him this day, or someone smiled on him, where it's like every gun jammed. And it kind of saved his life, and just the idea, your life. This guy tried to kill you in every which way, and you just got so frustrated. And again, it's the mundanity, and again, this is part of the gallows humor here, where this whole character is about the mundanity while being the most horrific Nazi ever. It's like, my gun's jammed, I can't kill people easily.
Okay, well, when you think about it with Gao, essentially what he views himself as is like the inspirational go-getter boss, and killing people is his way of like, hey, stay in line and this won't happen to you. Am I right? Now, who's up for Casual Tuesday?
Essentially, like again, his way, he wants Schindler's efficiency, and his efficiency would be Casual Fridays for the Nazis.
But you see what I mean? It's just like him going out and killing people is his way of like kind of like it's his version of like, all right, you and I, we're gonna have to have a talk, but don't worry, it's not going to be a bad talk. We're just going to vibe, man. We're just going to jive out. You know what I mean?
I got to tell you, so again, like Amon, Go theory is just kind of he's sort of the way Schindler is an enigma. This guy is also an enigma of. I love there's that twinge of gallows humor or comedy with him where he's gesturing with the chicken that was stolen. He's gesturing right before he does this very horrific thing right now. Where he
it's almost Shakespearean.
Yeah, I guess that's the proper. Yeah, it's the proper comparison. Yes, it is quite Shakespearean.
Because Shakespeare was a lot of Shakespearean works were known to follow either something dramatic and horrific, right, and then immediately follow with something almost hysterical.
Sure.
Okay, do we ever in this movie directly see one-on-one violence to a child?
I'm trying to think. Well, We all, and now you bring it up because we almost shot that kid in the street, but we didn't. I'm trying to think if we.
That's what I'm saying. I feel like that's a good magic trick. That's
one-on-one, no, but we do see the body of the little girl in red. That's
we see the body, yeah, but I feel like that's about the most we get, and I'm saying that in a good way. I'm saying that it's kind of like the box from Seven. You know what I mean? Everyone thinks they see Gwyneth Paltrow's head, but in reality, it's just the implications that really stick in our mind.
Yeah. So this whole sequence here, basically where we see now again, this is where the enigma of Oscar Schindler comes into play. And again, what Spielberg did is he kind of played it like Rosebud, and he plays it like Rosebud, and he kind of plays like a mystery, like you decide where Oscar Schindler, where his humanity starts to grow here. Because right now what he's doing is he's either securing his employees, but he's kind of going out of his way. And he later on he calls the fact that basically coming up in the scene here, he calls the fact that he knows exactly what Stern's doing. Like, you're saving Jews and using my factory as a haven. I know exactly what you're doing here. But it's this little sequence of Schindler providing bribes to Stearns, who basically all these people like the smart kid who saved the other Jews, where it's like he says, no, you killed the man who stole the chicken. Again, saving lives. Like, okay, this kid is valuable, and there's a question of, does Schindler like these people, or is it that deep down does he like these people, or is it just like Stern isn't telling him this, and he's just like, okay, I like Stern, so whatever Stern's doing is fine, until the point where this happens. Like, this is the line that at the very least what we do know is that Schindler drew a line. This line right here, that he does not want to be referred to as a hero, and he does not want his place referred to as a haven.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the conflict of the character. He has a great capacity for humanity because he deals in people, but he's not comfortable with being looked at as a savior. Honestly, Tiki, I'm going to say this is kind of what, this is a very sloppy comparison, but this is, I think, in Zack Snyder's wildest dreams, this is what he was like kind of pulling from for Superman, like what he should have done with it had he competently been. But you see, the whole I'm not comfortable being looked. This is how you do. I'm not comfortable. Being
Yeah, for sure.
This is how you do that story, and of course, it's the best version of how you do that story. It's like, I'm not comfortable being a savior, but I accept.
Instead of just making the guy look like he wants to like go cry in a sea of tears every time he's on screen.
And of course, like, the real acting is Cavill acting like, yeah, I'm excited to be part of this movie where I can't be the Superman I want to be. Yeah. God. Give that man an Oscar. He acted like he wanted to be in that movie. He did want to, but he acted like he was following the material.
So I have a quick question for you guys regarding the chicken scene. I hate to like kind of backtrack on it, but it's a long movie.
Sure.
Do you think the kid just kind of like on the fly made up a lie about the guy being shot being the guy who stole the chickens?
Absolutely, yes. I absolutely think that. Yes, that's the whole point I read it as.
Okay.
Funnily enough, when I just watched this earlier, I thought it was just like I thought it was like maybe it's just a coincidence that Goth actually shot him.
That's what I thought too at first, but then kind of rewatching it, I'm kind of putting the pieces together in my head about it.
I thought that it was a coincidence, but it could go either way. Really.
I think your guys' theory makes more sense.
So this is great. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of a story. Look, I'm just trying to add like a twinge of levity here, but just I remember there's this Incredibles documentary I was watching. It was called The Incredibles Revisited, and Brad Bird, he basically was on to the fact that he was being caricatured into Bob, into Syndrome, into Jack. Basically, almost all the male characters in the movie are being caricatured after Brad Bird. And Tony Facioli tells the story so wonderfully, where basically Tony Facioli was. Brad Bird was like doing like an animation review, or he was giving like notes on something. He just kind of whispered casually to him, I know what you're doing, by the way, because they were too late into production to change it. By the way, I know what you're doing. And that's kind of what we have here. But I bring it up because that's kind of what we have here, a more serious version of it here with Schindler here, where it's, it's like, look, I know what you're doing. You think I'm a fool? I know, you're trying to turn my place into a haven. And this, honestly, this whole scene, what Neeson's doing here is great, where he's justifying to himself that he's not the hero, that look, I'm just a businessman here. Don't make me into something I'm not. He's trying to convince himself that, Goth, the war has turned him into like a monster here. He's deep down is like, I've hung out with this guy. He has good qualities. He's a ladies' man. He's very aggressive, but it's a charm, I guess.
Uh-huh.
It seemed talking himself into like liking this guy that he's forced to be friends with isn't like this guy. And of course, this payoff here basically just brutally, kills just 25 people just for the sheer just heck of it. Honestly, he's just walking by there. I don't like that guy's haircut. Boom! It's horrible.
Okay, I have an interesting theory with this movie, and I don't know quite how to place it into words.
Right.
Do you think there's some sort of underlying sense that there's almost a sense of basically, oh God, this is a touchy thing where it's basically like the more brutality you see in the movie, the more it's just kind of like it becomes it almost kind of like echoes the experience that the Jews went through in the span of 3 hours, where it's like, okay, by the time we get to it's like we've been so beaten by it that it's almost like commonplace. You know what I mean? It doesn't take away the horror, but it almost kind of like makes the horror mundane when it in a way is horrifying in its own respect.
I don't think you're far off of that, Tiki. I kind of see what you're talking about there, and I kind of see that point where yes, there is a desensitizing element to it, and I think that is
desensitized. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for.
There is absolutely a desensitizing element to it. I just don't know how much of it's intended. I do feel some of it is intended, though.
I was actually trying to say that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Jacob. Sorry.
Fine.
Of course, he came around. He saved the old couple here. Oh, ain't that sweet, that old Oscar Schindler. It's Oscar Schindler.
It's Oscar Schindler. I think we have the running gag of this movie. Good form, Steven.
Good form, Oscar.
Good form, Oscar.
I just love that waiter. It's so jovial.
It's like the only character that's legitimately happy in this movie.
I think so. I think you're right, Jacob.
Okay, so Tiki, this is the crux of. We're getting to the crux of what you're talking about with the whole Goth and Schindler dynamic. Here's the huge pivotal scene I'm talking about. Right now, we have the Helen Hirsch scene that leads into that because this motivates that conversation. So, Helen Hirsch again, she's a very interesting character, and again, she's just this humble little character, and she has that memorable name. Like, again, we dedicate time to her without her like kind of taking like a whole subplot, but she's just kind of like a connective glue between the purpose of our story. Like, she essentially is the potential humanity. Basically, with all the Jews, the Schindler Jews, that's his humanity. If we had to economize it, then Stern is Schindler's conscience. Therefore, he's the majority of his humanity. And what we have on the Goth side of things is Helen Hirsch. Like, it's this Esmeralda element for him. It's like she's the temptation, and that really comes into fray later on. Where we kind of set this up here, where she's beaten, and she fears that she's going to be killed, because the idea is that Goth likes her, and because of that, he's such an uber Nazi. He just can't stomach that, and he wants to kill her, but he just deep down he has that humanity. It's like a Joker Harley Quinn thing. He has that shrivel up little heart of like, she makes me want to kill her sometimes, but I can't live without her. I really want her around.
And that's a sad thing. It's a very textbook example on a lot of abusive relationships.
Certainly, yes. And again, it's like the most, again, it's that realistic detail about abusive relationships blown in the most inappropriate, well, I shouldn't say, I mean, like in the most kind of volatile of times. For like, if you have the most like will they, won't they, most, like, sorry, will they, won't they is a horrible comparison, but if you had the most kind of like Romeo Juliet, it's like kind of most like one house, the other house sort of thing, like the most like two conflicting kind of schools of thought, schools of house, like different. I guess maybe a Bronx Tale, kind of like two races, two different kind of sides of town almost.
Except in those stories, like there was even though Romeo and Juliet was just like two teenagers just getting it on, basically, like they at least Romeo didn't see Juliet as an object.
That's true.
Like Goth does.
And again, Schindler here is looking for the bright side with his friend here, with the knowledge that he's going to try to kind of, he's but not just for her, but mainly for himself. And that's the important thing with Schindler. That again, it's kind of that thing we can't nail down, which is really smart and really interesting. That with Schindler here, it's a question of, is he having the conversation he has after this scene with Amon, because he wants to prove to himself that this guy has some humanity, that this guy could change, or because he cares about this this poor Jewish maid who's being tortured.
I think it's because it's definitely putting the pieces in place. Like every interaction he has with Amon is very strategic, very much kind of like playing a mental chess game in a way.
And either way you look at it, it serves the same.
One thing I noticed a lot of this, I was like, it's almost like Oscar trying to convince himself a lot of these things too as he's saying it.
Exactly, right. And the beautiful thing is we serve the same story. Like we kind of take a fork in the road, but we approach the same story point. We still kind of have either way it works. Where, it's in the end, it's that the long con is that he is convincing himself, but he's still in convincing himself. He's still attaching himself to the Jewish people. So again, he's traveling the same type of road, but through different venues to get to that point. Because he is going to help her by again, in finding the humanity in this guy. It is something that will benefit the majority of the people. Because if he can get this guy to kill less people, it will serve everybody. Because again, from what he's talked with Stern and with her, it's kind of like serving the same point. That's, I guess, what I'm getting at.
Well, okay, like to bring it back to like the mundanity of like middle management, which I very much think is a point with Ralph Fiennes in this movie.
It is, absolutely. You're right. Yes.
It's very much kind of like the middle manager who's a little bit gung ho about his job, and he means well, but it's just like, okay, we have to sit this guy down. We have to be like, all right, just let people do their thing, man. You don't have to micromanage everything. But as I said, it's like a very life and death version of that scenario.
Okay, real quick before we get into the meat potatoes of this amazing scene, because something occurred to me just now when you brought that up, Tiki, with Goth. I found really interesting. Later on, we're going to see Goth in like a medical exam, and he's out of shape and he drinks too much, and we're kind of hinting at that here already. And it kind of occurs to me, this is a guy who is like so pro-Nazi, he should be on the battlefield, but maybe because his body's so broken down, he has like this amateur vivacious lifestyle. The only job that he can have and be an effective Nazi at is like abusing people weaker than him. Which again, if he's he's a soldier a soldier who's in a weakened state, and as in he's in a human state, but he's coasting on his own superiority. Like I used to, I'm a commandante. I'm the head honcho Nazi. I'm the most important Nazi here.
He almost is like a sadist with a death wish.
Exactly, and again, now here's the interesting thing. Of course, with the whole Esmeralda quality, we'll get to later. Is that you do have this. Maybe he's drinking to nurse he's drinking to delude himself that he is superior. That he's not. That he is somewhat a good person. Maybe that's his conscience. Like his conscience coming out is not Stern, but it is him drinking, and that's why he doesn't treat himself to the good stuff. He treats all the lousy liquor because he feels that's what he deserves. That's his own penance for what he's done, but he will never admit it to himself. So this whole scene here about power is one of the best written scenes in the movie. I really do. I think it's great.
Power. That's power I'm on.
It's great. Where he basically, he's saying, the true power is like pardoning somebody, and of course, there's a bit of religious, there's kind of a religious element to the whole pardoning thing. I know he relates it to emperors, which is still very accurate, but at the same token, later on, we do have like a religious image with the pardon, which I think is interesting. But I love that we add this. This is the thing that blew me away with Goth, and this is why I love what Ralph Fiennes did with the character. It's more so in the performance he was already doing, because he was playing like generically, okay, it's good scary Nazi acting, but we add like this dimension to him that adds the gray to the movie here, where Schindler is trying to find the humanity, bring out the humanity in Goth, and through this whole don't kill people. The real power is being able to kill them and not, because there are two men who seek control, one over money, one over power. And in this case, what we really learn about these guys, that one represents control over life, Schindler, and the other one has control over death. They're two sides of the same coin, the same equation. List to kill people, list to save people. And he's trying to convince him that, hey, maybe you could convince him that you can go a less lethal route, which will improve the situation for my business, and by the same token, it will still play to your ego. It's a win-win solution. And the fascinating thing is that he tries it because it's a good idea. It's an idea. Schindler is a smart businessman. He respects his opinion. He views himself as his Stern, like he's my best buddy. So I'm going to try this out, and he tries it out. This is the most fascinating segment of the movie for me, where this little montage where he tries out the less lethal approach, and again, he's starting to feel good about it. It's like it's the sad truth that it's a good idea, and he has potential for change, and it's coming with Mirror and Schindler. They both have potential for change, and of course, Schindler is going to realize that potential. But when Goethe tries that potential, it ends in death. It's like the dark joke of it all is like he can try to change, but he deals in death too much. It's all he knows. If the minute he hits the most mundane roadblock, and the most mundane roadblock that we learn
right.
is a ring around his tub. That's the most mundane roadblock, and that's what. Okay, I give up on
it. But yeah, I do think it's very fascinating the fact that, like, with Schindler, it's very much just kind of speaking to the necessity, just sort of like, all right, I need to maintain a relationship with this guy, and hey, if I reach through to him a little bit, then then all the better for it. But with Go, it's just sort of like, okay, like I really respect this guy, and though he's very much challenging my core fundamentals, I need to give it a shot just because him and me are buddies.
Yeah, we're buddies, and this guy, he's a very successful businessman. He might know what he's talking, because again, he respects, like almost like a stock tip. He respects this guy's advice.
Right.
And again, also, I love this too. By the way, this is like a rewatch. I really caught this. So this is the same kid that Schindler, like Helen Hirsch is friends with this kid. They both served Goethe, and they kind of work together. And Schindler said, "Look, you don't want to like trade this." Like he bribed her with, like gave her like something she could bribe with and barter with and stuff. He says, "Well, look, you don't want to give it to the kid. The kid could use it." And of course, is what happens to the kid here. It's sad and Tiki. This is the most like the sensitized cut we have in the movie here. Where basically we initially think, okay, it's just like a scare tactic where he misses with his sniper, and then we have the desensitized moment. It's coming up. I'm jumping it a little bit. When we're on the outside and we reveal Stern just kind of walking over yet another dead body. That's a desensitized cut. That's absolutely. And that's intentional. And I know like that's intentional, and the other bits are also intentional. Anyway, so this is the whole religious thing here. Basically, I think I'm going to read into this here. I think when he does the pardon hand here, which of course is it's kind of a vaguely religious image. I think in this moment, in his twisted mind, what I think happens is he is reminded of like pardon. It reminds him of his own religious superiority. He's reminded that he's superior. That I don't need to do this. I can just kill people indiscriminately. It's like that was a reminder to him. Like the minute he did that little sign in the mirror, and he kind of glimpsed himself. Well, you know what? This is all fine and dandy, but I'll do things the way I do things.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I'm the emperor that can kill people, essentially.
Exactly. Like I can kill people. Basically, it's kind of him coming to grips with the fact that I kill people because I want to kill people. I don't kill people because I need to. I just do because I want to.
He's like the Carbopulous Michael of this movie.
Again, it's like he's
I just love killing.
Yeah, he's kind of like it's so much like Bullseye. I was so struck by it. That's exactly how I think of Bullseye and Daredevil at times. Where he's just the guy who just likes killing so psychotically like that. So I'm sorry, folks. I'm also giddy over Daredevil season 3 that we're getting this year. So there's a little bit of that mixed into this. Anyway, getting back to the movie at hand. Speaking of that hand, manicures.
God.
By the way, again, I keep mentioning this when we talk about things, especially when we did that Superman tribute. But the suspenders look, it's a good look. We got to bring this back.
I remember my dad was trying to bring it back when I was in high school. He was really into the suspenders thing.
I mean, not the rainbow suspenders, just like classic suspenders. Let's supplant the tie and bring back the suspenders. I mean, we've been transitioning towards lack of tie for a while now. It's like club owners, people go to clubs, they don't wear ties anymore. And why don't we just go with suspenders? It's like it's classy and it's in the middle.
Oh my god! Like I've been in a couple of plays, and one of my costumes actually had suspenders on it. Nice.
And I bet you looked really dapper in the suspenders.
Kinda.
There you go. Right.
I do. Not gonna lie, not to brag, but I do dress up nicely.
There you go. Now, here we go. And this is the sequence I was teasing earlier. So this is the big kind of the Esmeralda scene coming up here. We're going to intercut with it so well here. Where this is Michael. I call it a Michael Kahn special here. It's like one of the most beautiful examples of his editing I've ever seen here. And again, I've seen all these Spielberg movies, and it's been ages since I've really seen. I've never had to fully appreciate Schindler's. I had to appreciate kind of the historical elements of it, but never like the full thing as a work of film. And the way this sequence is put together, we juxtapose the wedding, where again Schindler again is slowly but surely. It's essentially it's kind of a celebration, but I believe I don't know if we cut to a different day or what, but I feel like it's a wedding and Schindler's birthday. I'm not sure. But regardless, a celebration is going on, and Schindler, he's kind of indoctrinated into. He's again slowly but surely being indoctrinated into the hearts and minds of the Jews that he's provided haven for. And we juxtapose that celebration, it's like in the bon vivant kind of Playboy we're in, like women fling to him, like a woman's performing, and she's attracted to him during the performance, versus this horrifying scene. And when things get cooking, that's when that's when the editing comes into play. So I'm just kind of laying the groundwork for that here. So let's talk about the Esmeralda of it all, guys.
Esmeralda.
I mean, we already kind of, that's the thing with this movie and this commentary track, Dragon. By its very nature, we're going to bring up ideas that are, way ahead of it. But I feel like I already kind of said my piece on the Esmeralda thing. It's very much sort of the, the sympathetic villain to a certain extent. And with Go, it's like that's what fascinates me about Go, and that's what really Go was the big selling point of this movie for me. I very much walked in like, okay, like let's see what all the hype over this Ray Fiennes villain is all about. And I definitely got that with the character. I got the hype.
By the way, Ray Fiennes, of course, he's such a good actor. I remember him. I think I always remember Ray Fiennes is the Red Dragon, where he played Francis Dollarhide in that story. He's such a great and complex. Again, he played a villain with layers, kind of like he's doing now. And of course, by the same token, he's so good in that. And here,
and of course, he's Voldemort. So he's the wizard Hitler.
Basically, he is super intimidating in this scene with this one-sided conversation where she doesn't say a thing, and he blames her. Basically, he thinks that she's saying things in this scene. It's like he's not imagining that she's saying things, but he's not hallucinating it, but he's just playing it off like he's having this conversation. What he's doing is he's having a moral debate with himself, of like the Esmeralda debate of I'm attracted to you. You don't look like we've been taught that you look like. You don't look like a rodent. You don't look like lice. You're not. You're a person. It's like the minute again, his humanity is kind of coming forth, and he's like Frollo having that religious quandary of like I'm attracted to a gypsy, and that's wrong, but I like her, so I gotta kill her. And we have the flip side of something like that with here, where again he's burning with desire for this woman, but he can't bring himself, like he values her and he likes her and he wants to consummate something, but he knows that it's wrong, and it's a completely counterculture to the hate-filled life that he's been indoctrinated with. So, which of course will lead to the only expression of love that he can muster, which is violence. As we've seen, he's the king of violence. The only romance for him, like the most pure, sweetest romance he can have with this girl in his own mind is through violence and control. Like, she'll stay with me and I can abuse her all I want.
Right, again, right, yeah.
Basically, it's his, I'm referencing earlier, his definition of power.
Yes. And again, here's where the editing starts to come into play here. Again, like we're cutting through like him touching the girl too. Of course, Schindler kind of getting frisky.
Which again is just sort of like, okay, Schindler, you're not a 100% great guy,
but he's so delightful. That's Oscar Schindler.
It's Oscar Schindler.
Of course, again, the light bulb's a nice touch here, and again, like we have a wedding going on, and then it's again just this. Here's the thing: like you never see this, and it's again, I don't know if it's the effect that's just not in vogue anymore or what. Because again, just like the minute he struck her, blood started to flow, and you never see that. It's always like after like the end result of it, then they have some blood. But it's like first strike blood.
Maybe this is like perhaps that could be like one of the movie's few creative liberties when it comes to the violence, just for impact.
Like whether it works, whether it like practically works or not, just it looks so striking.
I think if like someone's like like you saw how hard he hit her, obviously. Like
Exactly, I buy it that because again, it hits so hard.
the thing was like a couple side notes. Here's like he actually Ralph Fiennes or however you pronounce his name actually did hit. They actually agreed he should legitimately hit her in that scene.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, it's like to make it more effective, but and she had to like wear an ice pack afterwards.
So sorry.
But my other side note was like the point I was trying to make was like it's entirely feasible that I guess like if someone gets hit hard enough in the nose, like maybe not that much blood, but there would definitely be blood.
So we have the end result too with the Ray Fiennes stuff is as violent and as scary as he gets. At the same time, he was Alfred in the Lego Batman movie. So if anyone's really terrified by him, just remember that little nugget. Anyway, so the flip side too. So again, I love how we cut between kind of the two romances, and of course we have the thing just unfurled before us. There was the famous kiss, and I do love that lands him in hot water because believably it would land him in hot water at that time, and it's. And again, I think it's like a document. Here's the thing. I think this might have happened to him a couple times where he's kissed a Jewish girl and he was in hot water, and they made it like a one big thing, which was a smart call. Which it was a smart move, and the fact that again nothing is wasted. Therefore, it doesn't come back instantly, but it does come back. So now this is the big jaw. This is the equivalent to our Indianapolis speech. If Auschwitz / the trains are our jaws, this is the big Indianapolis speech that sets up the horror of everything here. This is such a brilliant idea. I mean, oh my, it's again, folks. Again, drinking games. If I keep saying brilliant idea, or I keep saying this is great. Again, I apologize, but
and again, maybe it's not the best word choice considering the atrocities and the horror at play here, but yeah,
the filmmaking is great. Come on.
Yeah.
But this is such a creative setup here, where we set up the myth almost of like, oh, I heard that this happened. Of course, it's like a dramatic irony of the scene of like we know exactly, it's like the audience knows, but they do not know for certain. Of like, well, how could the tale be told if they would have logically survived? Therefore, they wouldn't have been gassed at Auschwitz. It's like, and of course the trains come by, they take you there, and then all the horror unfurls.
It's like they probably believe like the Nazis could have used it as like a scare tactic.
Exactly, and you can't in their shoes, you might buy it, right? It might be like again, this is the time, this is the wartime propaganda at work for all you know. It's like, okay, we always hear this sort of stuff from like one side to the other. Like sometimes it comes from the Americans, sometimes, well, probably not from the Americans in their case, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Yeah. Let's see. I believe this is the beginning of something really bad. I believe. I mean, bad in the sense of like it's a strike. It's really bad in the sense of oh boy, some bad, horrible stuff's about to happen.
If that's the case, I definitely need to open my eyes at this point.
One second, let me double check because I haven't even started. This is the scene. Yeah, they're starting.
Yeah. Okay. You just tell me when it's over, guys. I can't read it.
I'll tell you. So this is
actually this might be one of the ones like you guys like I don't know, like it might be hard for me to even talk about this one.
All right, well, do you want us to skirt around it, or you just want to like?
No, don't skirt around it. I might just kind of phase out of the conversation for a second.
Well, here's something you can talk about. You can see real quick because this is the whole like before we get into the horror of it all. This is the thing I was talking about earlier. Where again, we set up that he has to lay off the cognac and he's in bad shape. Mm-hmm.
I tell you what, I've got a Red Bull I'm going to open just so I can get through the movie. While I drink it, you guys just kind of take the lead.
Yeah, you're going to want to look away right now. So you're.
Oh no, I've already averted my eyes. Trust me.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
So coming up, this is it's interesting because there's some things again. As Spielberg, it was a no holds bar going into this movie, and in doing so, there's still some things, even with that in mind, that you had to skirt around. You could only drop hints at. Where we did this clever thing where we juxtaposed the horrors of Nazi science, essentially, where we didn't show the horrors, but we kind of set it up here. We kind of vaguely allude to the horrors of Nazi science here. The idea is that these people are giving a health check. The primary thing that's going on here, of course, is very graphic and very horrible. So that's another thing. That's why it's really hard to watch scenes. I don't blame anyone for turning away from this scene, honestly. But my point is that the
But of
main.
course, I'm sorry, go ahead, but we have to talk about the censorship of this scene, or the lack of censorship, because
That's the thing. From what I understand, like this scene, even when it airs, like this scene probably isn't censored because it's historical. That's the thing. Like, I saw it on TV, but I think it was like I don't know what channel it was on though.
I mean, I think there's like I might be completely wrong in this situation, but I think there might actually be a rule like you can't censorship like historical nudity or something along those lines, and like unless it's like just there for basically gratuity, but something like this they usually don't censor.
Like if anything, I would imagine they would censor the two sex scenes from earlier, but we would, but because it's like anything that's in a bed, then they would censor that.
That makes sense.
But here, this would be completely unfiltered because again, it's just.
I mean, basically, those scenes are basically just be gratuitous.
Yeah. So let's see. What was I getting at here? Oh yeah. So again, the main purpose of this scene is to distract the mothers, basically separate the parents from the children. That's the main idea behind this. But by the same token, they're kind of checking off a few boxes here. So one, it's kind of a health check. Two, it's to distract them. And three, the thing that they're alluding to. But again, there's some things you still really don't want to get into. We're kind of referencing. I hear that he was cast in the movie, but I don't know out of any of these doctors who the guy is. But it's Dr. Mengele, the horrible Nazi scientist. He's in this scene. I don't know. I've seen him credited in this scene. I just don't know where he is in it. But again, they're kind of being the idea is like kind of the cream of the crop. Basically, the healthier being put back in the line. Like interesting cases are probably being carted off to Dr. Mengele. So that's the implication they really skirted by, and I don't blame them too because that's just again I've heard that.
What's the timestamp right now?
Jacob, what do you rule it as? Because I got it like kind of around.
I don't know. I'm on my TV.
It's hard to sorry, folks. A little hard to tell on Netflix because until like I got like around 2 hours 2 minutes, I guess. But
okay, well, let's just say 2 hours.
Right now, exactly 2:03 for me right now.
Exactly. It might be. I might actually be on 2 or 3, but again, it's kind of hard to think.
Would you actually say this is kind of like the turning point into Act 3? This is the low of lows, if you will.
Let me see. I think from what I've heard, Act 3 really. Here's the thing. I think Act 3 is when he sees the little girl in the basically the whole when the party's over, Oscar. That's the end of Act. That's the end of Act 2, I should say. That's what
the place where I placed the beginning of Act 3 would like begin the burning.
That's fair. I get that. I don't know. I kind of agree with the point that it would end with. Again, like party's over, and then Oscar's come around, so now he's fully invested.
Also, another question. You guys said with the DVD they broke it up into 2 discs. Where is the breaking point with that?
I didn't look into it because I didn't want to, because initially I was going to use the DVD for this, but then I realized, I completely, because I'd watched it on Netflix and I've had the DVD kind of waiting for me. I keep watching it on TV or on Netflix.
Sandy, you said you had the DVD. Where's the breaking point?
Yeah, well, Sandy's been silent for quite a while.
My guess will be the hour and a half point.
All right. I think something happened to Sandy.
That'll be fine. And of course, again, this is all just kind of
you haven't podcasted enough, Sandy.
Bad form, Sandy.
Bad form, Sandy.
But yes, so again, basically all this, the run around, it's degradation, it's humiliation. So again, you have all that, and again, like the horrible implication. Again, a lot of horrible implications with the scene too, because basically the imagery of the doctors that again speaks volumes to the Nazi science if we're not even seeing it. So at least they got it in as much as they needed to. Anyway, so this to me is still really horrifying. We kind of had this. I think we had this a little bit. I guess it was War of the Worlds maybe. I'm trying to think of where I was thinking about this scene when we were watching something else, but. The whole this horrible thing. Oh yeah, it's Hook, because the whole like parents being separated from children. That's what I was thinking of. And this scene here where the kids are being carted off and they're sort of waving all in, it's like hi, and then the mothers and fathers, they let out a scream and they're running beside the vehicles. Like that to me is like, oh my god, they captured the horror of that perfectly. That's like every
the breaking point in the movie where it's just like, okay, this is just a nightmare. This has gone from like a bad but tolerable situation to just an inhumane situation to like this is the stuff nightmares are made of. Like what is going to, like humanity has just failed us at this point.
See, I kind of read this as the continuation of the liquidation scene. I know it's different.
Oh, it definitely is, Dragon. I'm glad you bring that. That's kind of why I sort of place it as at least towards the end of Act 2. Is it's definitely that kind of emotionally gripping sort of sequence.
And here's the this is the scene I would have to look away from for a brief, at least blink through for a moment here with this poor kid is looking so desperately for a hiding space, and we find Danka in another hiding place. It's just, oh my god, it is nuts. Again, I remember there was like I'm trying to think what the movie was. The like something I've seen in Slumdog Millionaire, but this is much more horrific. That was like they tried playing that for comedy, just gross ass. Like this is like you play it for just you're doing what you can to survive. And it's like yeah.
The thing that disturbs me is the fact that there's already kids down there. It's already like, no, get out. This is our spot. It's just like, oh Jesus Christ, it's that bad of a situation.
Yeah, and again, we're echoing the scene from earlier. The whole like the mother again, Danka and her mother like saying, "You, like, I can't fit 2 people in here. You're just like fear talk right now." Like, no, I just give one or the other. And of course, honestly, for me, the bacteria bill really creeps me out. Of like, oh god, if all like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to go germophobic on you. I'm just saying like it's just kind of like, oh man, of all places to like be worried about germs. I mean, come on.
All right.
So in this, oh my god, this is a great scene here. Again, it's like these are the scenes I live for with Oscar Schindler's Man. I love the heroic moments of Oscar Schindler. That's the reason. I'm really one of the reasons.
Look at the screen again, or
oh yeah, it's safe now. I mean,
okay.
the Oscar Schindler's doing heroic stuff now. It's all good. Like the sewage was like the last part of it, of the whole like kind of sequel to the liquidation scene, I guess. And again, I like that Oscar's in all white too, because this is kind of visually visually communicating that here. Where our other guys in gray. Because of the black and white, our Schindler here is in white, as in like he's a beacon of light and hope right now. So
these hands reaching out of the train car is definitely probably. Would you guys say it's maybe the strongest way the movie evokes the stock footage?
Maybe. I'm trying to think if there might be a better example, but I think you might be right. I mean, for me, again, it's less the footage, more like the stacks and stacks of clothing and everything. That to me feels like, again, that's pulled right out out of a museum.
But
I guess if like we're looking at like footage, yes. And honestly, what we're doing here, we're kind of blending the cinematic framing with the documentary stuff because the camera's moving like a documentary. But it's vaguely cinematic though, because we're following one person. So it's kind of a great. See, now we've reached the nexus of where documentary meets cinema.
Right.
It's like more all documentary and all cinema. Now it's just blended it, and that's has to be intentional. And again, here, like Schindler providing
Jacob,
water.
Do you want to send a message to Sandy?
I'll try.
Okay. Sorry, Dragon.
So what was I going about? Oh yeah, so again, so there is a thematicism about water in this movie. That water is kind of like it's kind of salvation, and Schindler is providing the salvation here, kind of the salvation to the salivation, one could say. Anyway, the point is, I love it when Schindler gets heroic in moments like this, and I love that again he's using that bond where again he knows what his dynamic is, where he tried to change Goethe. And Goeth's going along with it, so he has kind of succeeded in some way. Where Goeth's like, again, it's like in a joking manner. He knows people. He knows how to reach them. Like, hey, I'm going to play this off like a joke, but I really want to help these people. And again, I don't think you read this any other way than Schindler wants to help these people, wants to treat them with humanity. Where otherwise, it's like, again, Schindler is starting to come around in a big way here, where he's feeling guilty, but he won't admit it.
And he's playing to their. How the Nazis they believe like he's like giving them false hope only to crush it later.
Yeah, and again, obviously, he has to care about what's going on here. Otherwise, why would he go out his way for something like this? And it's
though it looks like I think Goeth is like onto him a little bit.
I love that it's a half measure, though. I love that it's a half measure in the sense of. It's like this is a temporary fix, and I love that what Goethe says to him throughout the movie does have a point to what Schindler eventually does. We're like, hey, you're poisoning them with hope, as in like it's like it's even worse. It's even crueler, Oscar Schindler. Oh, it's like he has the evil version of the maitre d' here, like Oscar, that's Oscar Schindler.
Oh God.
Oh, that Oscar Schindler, he's a crafty one. But yeah, I think it's kind of a nice, again, like baby steps to big moments of heroism there, where he has the right idea, but he's not doing like enough something that's going to have lasting impact, just like temporary, like basically prolonging the inevitable with moments like that. And of course, Schindler in this moment here, he's being arrested for for kissing a Jewish girl, and he's having a laugh with kind of the bully upper class here, like what are you in for? Just kissing a Jewish girl. Did your brick fall off?
Oh boy.
Of course, Liam Neeson in Small Cells kind of makes me think of Batman Begins a little bit.
Okay, I've got to admit, like some of this like casual racism in the movie is like it's tame on a visual level, but it's disturbing on a humanitarian level.
I think it goes far. I'm sorry, take you on.
Like specifically, did the whole "did your prick fall off" thing, and then also like one of the early things we see in the movie, the whole "goodbye Jews." You know what I mean?
Tiki, I swear to God, something occurred to me in the moment while you were saying that, because it kind of lined up exactly with the footage here, where I think he realizes that in that scene, because you see he's starting to laugh, like, okay, it's the bon vivant kind of getting along with everybody, but then he kind of ramps down the laugh, and like the smile kind of goes away, and I think that's him realizing, I'm kind of uncomfortable with this.
Right.
I used to just kind of play along with this, but now I'm kind of feeling something. I think it's him coming to the realization. Of course, this is great here, where again, this is feeling like he's Stern to Oscar here, where it's like, I'm going to stick up for my buddy. I'm going to use my pull to get my buddy out of this little situation, land himself in. And what's so great is that in the way that Schindler was trying to save himself through Goethe, like, if I can redeem this guy, I can convince myself that I can keep going along without being a hero. And what Goethe is doing is he's trying to justify his own feelings for Helen Hirsch by justifying, like, Jews are, he's having the Jews, they have like a gypsy way about them. They have they have like a seductive magic trick about them. Like, can you blame them? And again, that's him voicing his own like fears about himself and trying to, like, if Oscar Schindler can get away with it, so can I, right? Yeah. Basically, I guess another way of calling it it's the Frollo defense, which is
the Frollo defense. Yes,
legally, like he's given the Frollo defense. Oh, she's a gypsy. It's like he's a Jewish gypsy. It's her way.
God.
Like he treats it as like some kind of disease.
Yeah, like temporary insanity. It's like he's just going for like the temporary insanity plea. This is something that just kind of occurred to me in the moment here. Is I see him seeing like the soldiers playing ball with the kids, which is just kind of like, oh man, that's sort of again, it's that little like Nazi soldiers love kids, but they hate they're really mean when it comes to the job. It's like they're I don't know what it is.
And okay, that's what this is not snow.
I know this is one of the most okay. To me, this is where Act 3. Sorry, this is where I keep saying Act 3. This is where Act 2 ends. Mm-hmm. Where you have this great. Again, we're evoking Auschwitz here with ash falling from the sky. And initially, you're thinking, is it Auschwitz? And then you realize it's something even worse. Where the idea is there. Yeah, I don't know if you want to look away for this or not. I don't.
Oh no, I'm actually like it's. Don't worry about it.
So okay, because I think there's only one of
we passed my 2 breaking point scenes.
The music during this scene is just, oh my god.
Williams magic right here. It's great.
Haunting almost. Yeah. It's like I saw I'm watching it with subtitles and they specifically call it a requiem.
Oh yeah, it's nothing beats again for my love Mask of the Phantasm, nothing beats a requiem mass. I mean, come on, nothing beats when you have a choir behind you, nothing beats that. But yeah, we have to
go ahead.
I mean, boy, we he really brings, again, this one psychotic guy just screaming because he's just uber Nazi here, just shooting the dead bodies and shooting the corpses. The horrifying idea here is that they've been ordered from the top down to get rid of all traces of Jews. So they have to dig up the bodies that they killed from the liquidation scene, and they have to burn them.
Again, with the theme of erasing history that kind of runs throughout the movie.
Exactly. Yes. And of course, again, the minute he says the party's over, because this is where Oscar, basically when we get into Act 3, Oscar points out that he's accomplished his goal, like he has everything he wants, and anything he does now is from the point of, again, party's over, as in business is done, business is closed, you've accomplished what you want to do, so what are you going to do next? And of course, the what do you want to do next is less in a business sense, after he has this emotional realization with the little girl in red of like, could have prevented this. I just watched this happen. I'm starting to slowly care about these Jews, and I'm seeing this charming little Jewish girl in red who's kind of skirted by, and I just assumed she would be fine, and now she's dead because people didn't act, and that's really haunting to him. And that's the idea that, for me, look, everyone has their own opinion on this, I'm sure, and it's fine. I think I'm with the consensus. I think the consensus would agree that the little girl in red, that's the straw that breaks the camel's back. That's where Schindler, that's where his Rosebud comes into play. That's kind of his, like, that's the end of his Scrooge nightmare, let's say. I'm not saying he's a cruel man. I'm just saying that's like the whole, he wakes up from the fire pit and he comes alive as a good man again.
Yeah, for sure.
The red girl is his awakening. That's his realization of, okay, now he acknowledges that he's the hero and he's the only chance these guys have. This moment here, it's out of desperation, but again, it's from a point where he acknowledges the care and the friendship that he's cultivated with Stern, where Stern takes that drink out of, like, I don't think I'm going to be able to drink it later. It's like the moment he takes that drink, that cements their friendship and cements the rest of the Jews as Schindler's surrogate family.
Then really, the rest of the movie is kind of like a wind down from this, which I find the pacing of this movie fascinating because it's like both fast-paced and slow-paced at the same time.
I know, right? Yeah, because you do have that sort of fast-paced thing going on there.
You have fast-paced because it's relentless. There's, like, stuff is being thrown at you constantly, but slow-paced in that the story takes its damn slow time to develop. You know what I mean? It takes its time. It really marinates in the character development.
So before the drink happens, again, the drink is the symbol of what solidifies. And also, if you want to read into it, you could say if water is salvation, then the drink is like it's something a little harder than water. That, again, that's what it's like, blood thicker than water sort of thing. The blood being kind of liquor, as in like you bond with somebody when you drink with them. Again, he bonded with Goethe, and that's why Goethe thought he was like the best pal in the world there, because you and I drink together, therefore we have a bond.
Right.
But I like that, before that drink, that again, if Stern is the conscience issues Schindler a challenge of, because he says it in a way that is not intended to be declarative, but like he's not issuing a challenge, he's not being sardonic or anything, he's just being real genuine with him here. But he poses a challenge to Schindler on a character level where he says, "What can you do?" And by "what can you do," he means, "Hey, what can you do? Your hands are tied, right?" It's kind of like a little right. So like, you can't do anything, right, Mr. Richest guy in the world now.
Mm-hmm.
This is where it's kind of the idea is hitting them here. Like, I can do more, and I will do more.
So I feel like this, again, going back to the structure of this movie, I feel like it's a very unique situation where it's almost it kind of blurs the line between like a documentary, a play, and a traditional 3-act structure.
I think you're right about that. I never thought of it that way, but yeah, it is kind of a blend of all three.
Because I think with the play of it all, you have the epilogue and the prologue. You know what I mean? Like that very much feels to me like a night out at the theater, and you're really getting the whole experience. Then, of course, with the documentary, I feel like the documentary is just sort of like showcasing the events as they happen. There's not really a ton of rhyme or reason to, the events unfolding the way they do. It's just kind of history presenting itself. And then, of course, the 3-act structure is there. It is prevalent. Spielberg is a master of the 3-act structure, so he does incorporate it.
Now, speaking of structure, I want to bring this up. I love story-wise. Okay, so we've done kind of that thing we always thought about Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, where we give our characters an out. we solve all their problems. Like Walter White is presented with gray matter. It's like, okay, well, they're going to pay for your cancer treatments. Therefore, show's over. With Jimmy McGill, it's like, okay, Davis and Maine. What more could you want? And here, what we do with Schindler is, through Goethe here, we echo. He basically spells it out for us in a Google, like, who are you, Moses? As in, if you're doing this, you care. As in, like, Goethe is saying, this makes no financial sense. Like, he's spelling out that you're doing this not out of money. You're doing this for some reason that, again, he can't comprehend because he can't admit to himself because of his ego that he cares. Versus Schindler, who knows that he cares, but he can't let that on to Goethe. And he's secure in that Goethe would never figure it out because Goethe can't. He already tested it out with him. He can't feel emotion. Of course, Pfefferberg, one of the first names on the list. Again, the writer of the movie, get it? So he's like one of the first names on it. Well, the guy who made the movie. I keep saying writer because he didn't write the book, but he inspired the book. The whole
right.
He's the guy who told the Thomas to Kini or whatever the author's name is.
Yeah.
And then Steve Zalian wrote it, and Steven Spielberg directed it.
So, speaking of Better Call Saul, Tiki and I always remark how Better Call Saul makes the mundane as fantastic and on edge, even more so than Breaking Bad at times, if not in its entirety. Again, we'd make that argument, let's just say at times, for any diehard Breaking Bad fans out there. The point is, with that, we take just office matters and very trivial, mundane matters and paperwork and 1216 to 1261 things like that. Right. And what we do here, again, the whole movie, hence the title, hinges on making a list. And how exciting it's you question from a skeptical point of view, you question, how do you make a list cool? This is how you do that. You make this list it's mundane but yet so intense, and we have that Williams score that's, again, it's kind of that. This is like John Williams from Catch Me If You Can, sort of. I know this came first, obviously. My point is, it's sort of that. It's like John Williams weaving that integral web of you're on the edge of your seat. You want to know what's going to happen next. It's it's a thriller of oh my god, but it's just words being typed here. It's just literally name upon name being added. But it's such a pivotal part of the movie. It's just kind of mounting on top of itself. Each list you can feel kind of listing on mounting on top of the other one, that he's saving more and more people. With each ink pressing the page, it's him saving somebody. Like
how I mentioned earlier, how he mentions later, this paper represents life.
Exactly. And also this scene here, again, I love seeing Oskar Schindler as kind of the salesman who cannot be beat here. Whereas it's great, it's Liam Neeson acting at its finest here. This is Liam Neeson that I absolutely love as a racial.
I gotta say, the cult of Liam Neeson is this unstoppable badass kind of. Yeah, I'm kind of tired of it a little bit.
Well, here's the thing. I always like Liam Neeson more so in kind of that intellectual capacity.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Even in Star Wars, even with Qui-Gon Jinn, he was more kind of just the soft-spoken, wise master. There wasn't an air of badass to him. Really, it's just the one movie. I don't know. The cult of Liam Neeson to me kind of bothers me a little bit, but I don't want to go off on a tangent.
Let me change my word choice now, because again, intellectual sounds like it's I'm trying to show off. But I like that it's kind of that more soft-spoken, smarter Liam Neeson, where again, it's basically this is the kind of performance that makes me absolutely buy that. Again, this guy is a no-brainer for Ra's al Ghul, because he's a guy who has power without doing anything. Ra's al Ghul can sword fight, but he doesn't need the sword fight. That's kind of what he is, where he's a guy who's just the conversations you have with that character, and I buy absolutely a guy who has the wisdom of 600 years in a performance like Liam Neeson's given here almost.
Oh,
it's I buy that a character with life and experience and integrity, and moments like what we had during that montage where he says, "I won't accept that," where the investors that is going to keep saying no, and he says, "I won't accept that." It's just in his face, that's a Ra's al Ghul moment right there, and that's why Neeson's perfect for that role.
And of course, Ra's al Ghul is one of the few villain roles that Liam Neeson has done.
I know, but one of the best though. It's my God. So great. Of course, like that, and and of course, from A Million Ways to Die in the West, he played an evil.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. He was a fun evil Irish cowboy.
Wasn't he also Aslan in Chronicles of Narnia? I know that's
literally the Jesus Lion. Yes.
I know that's not a villainous role, but still.
No, it's the opposite of a
villain. That Neeson gets around. He does stuff. So I love this sweet bit of the realization. It's already passed, but I just want to cover it too, because again, a lot of stuff happens in this movie, folks. So Stern's realization of like you're not paying for them, are you? Where he realizes, oh my God, you're doing all this out of pocket. And that's where he like truly like he was already befriending Schindler, whether he'd admit it or not. But now he's like, oh my God, I respect this man so much. Like all of his wealth, he had everything he ever wanted. He was like King Midas up in here, and now he's giving it all away like wholesale to save as many people as he can.
Mm-hmm.
And this conversation here, again, it shows that, again, Goethe has that shriveled heart when it comes to Helen Hirsch. That, again, he does care, but he'll go with a mercy killing before he would admit it. Like, you know, I'd like to just kind of settle down with her, but I'd have to kill her, though, because I know I can't take her with me. I can't, like, go to Vienna with her, because that obviously not practical. She would never be allowed to go there, but I'll give her a mercy killing telling her about Vienna, though. That's his version of like a romantic goodbye. Like he'll say, "Oh, we could have had such a life together." Bang! That's what he would have done.
God.
And his ego is preventing him from compromising. Like he can't just say, "You put her on the list." He has to, like, what was that card game again? This is the most Casablanca, by the way. Their dynamic is the whole like,
oh yeah, for sure.
You know, the gambling officer in a way. It's like,
correct me if I'm wrong, but is this not Go's last major scene in the movie?
Pretty much.
No, we do major scene, yes, but we do see him in an important part later on. We do have his comeuppance. We see his comeuppance.
Well, I know we see his comeuppance, but this is like the last like full scene we get of him.
It's basically the moment where he finally loses to Oscar Schindler.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Even though there's still a lot of the movie left.
Yes.
And that's what I'm saying about the pacing of this movie being like both slow and fast at the same time. It's like basically the last 40 minutes of this movie is all kind of like winding down tension. You know what I mean?
There's a moment.
It's very much an exercise of building up and then winding down tension.
There's a moment in this movie where it feels like if you looked at it objectively or on paper, you'd say, okay, this movie goes on too long, but it doesn't feel that way because it does a switch where you're 100% compelled and you're sucked into it. We're like, I gotta know what happens next. It's like logically, it's like, okay, we drag the movie on after it logically ends, but no, it's like
also just given the source material and the subject matter and everything, I feel like this is like we absolutely just have to give him a free pass to, like, if he wants to make a 4-hour movie, he can make a 4-hour movie out of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. By the way, just with all the survivors that we're seeing here, they'd used all sort. I'm sorry, Jacob or Sandy mentioned this earlier. You know, we did use a lot of survivor testimonials, which of course eventually went to the Shoah Foundation, but they also filmed them, and they used all the filmed testimonials on the DVD for this really long bonus features, really long documentary. Basically, everyone kind of it's them edited, all their sit down interviews edited to revolve around the whole Oscar Schindler affair. But again, it's from the mouths of the actual people that he saved. So literally all the people you see in this movie are descendants, some of them mostly descendants. Descendants or like or survivors, like obviously Stern, who was one, he was 3 people, but from what I understand, those 3 people are all passed away, and they'd be their descendants that would probably be involved in that process. Anyway, well, this is a cute little bit here. This again, I would say again, as we've kind of agreed upon, Act 1 has the most Spielbergisms, but we do have like an invented little Spielberg thing here with the icicle, which is probably pulled from real life. Honestly, I could buy this like a real thing where you need water, icicles.
I've done that in moments of desperation with thirst, for sure.
Really? Icicles?
Well, not icicles, but like ice cubes in a drink. Like when I finish my drink too quickly and I'm like, well, at least I have ice cubes.
And of course, this is a great juxtaposition we have here. We have, again, we're using the train as our Jaws here. We have like kind of basically this is the Free Willy train, and then we have the Jaws train. Later on. This is like Zoll.
Oh my God. That's perfect.
Again, this is the train of salvation. Like the minute you see Oscar Schindler,
he's like wraparound art on these 2 trains, like they have on the Disney World monorails,
or like like the bombers, where you have like a design printed on the bombers,
oh my God.
Like that. But seriously, I love this front Tiki. It's almost speaking of Disney, it's almost like this Disney-like image of like the train pulls up and you see, oh my God, there's Oscar Schindler smiling at you. It's like, what if Walt Disney smiled? It's almost like a Walt Disney greeting of like back in when the parks open. It's like, hey, there's Walt Disney greeting.
Sure.
To a stop.
Oh, jeez.
Oh,
I
man.
love Schindler just like blowing that one guy off, saying, "Okay, yes, I get it. You're eager to
yeah.
torture people." Yeah.
Only you guys can compare this to Disneyland.
Right. You know what?
Well, to be fair, Oscar Schindler.
I've got to say, I'm proud of how much levity we've managed to incorporate into this podcast. I don't view that as a negative.
If it was a bad movie, then we'd be in quite a pickle. That's the thing. If we didn't have like good things to if we didn't have things to enjoy, then we'd be in trouble with this movie. If this is like a 3-hour, basically this is a 3-hour like boring, like depressing historical drama, then we'd be in trouble. Thankfully, it is none of those things.
Yeah, fortunately, it's not like, overly melodramatic.
Yeah. Again, now we have
it's the right kind of dramatic.
So now here's the jaws of our Auschwitz trains here. This is the big. Oh my God! I'm sorry, I completely forgot about the last. I was taking my notes. I left this out, but the whole like the warning, the eerie warning of the child, like the finger to the throat of like you're gonna die here. It's like, oh my God, that's terrifying.
It's like as I like throughout the entire movie, like you see all this like very descriptive text, like saying like in full sentences and stuff, like this is what happened. This is what happened here in one day and stuff like that. All you see here is just Auschwitz.
And again, we keep building and building till we actually see here, like all the steam coming from the top of the train. Of course, one of the biggest symbols of not just the train, but the smokestack, which we are still building to. And honestly, it's like there's this eerie question of when we get there: is the smoke billowing the reason for the snow, or is it actual snow?
It's like many people might not know like the whole full horrors of the Holocaust, but pretty much you'll be hard pressed to find anyone who doesn't know of Auschwitz.
Yeah.
And then like that, and when it just shows Auschwitz, that's when you're like, oh no.
I mean, essentially, Auschwitz is death. Essentially, it's like a land of death, and not I mean like in a fun way. I mean I don't mean like in a Coco way. I'm saying this is a land of death in the worst sense of.
No, Dragon, not in that way. No.
No, it is not. It's not the land of the dead. It is like a land where death happens, and it is inhuman and it is scary.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, we evoke all these very. Like the uniforms with here's the thing, they actually shot. So again, I like this. So they shot in Auschwitz. When they did this, again, they couldn't have they had to shoot some of this in a different location when they wanted to get like shots of swastikas and like certain certain Nazi basically any anti-Semitic stuff they would have to shoot in an alternate location. But again, they did shoot in Auschwitz, which is really cold, and this snow might actually be real, to be frank, because again, it was really cold when they shot there. And those dogs are real mean dogs, by the way. Those are just they're. I don't know how trained they are. I'll say that much. I mean, I assume Spielberg he's a good filmmaker, so he's going to get trained dogs just to look mean, but those are real mean dogs, from what I heard.
And there's the stack.
Now, with the stack, I love that what we do is we have the ultimate subversion here, where the film has done such a good job of building and building and building to the horror of Auschwitz. We've homaged it. We had the ashes that were raining down earlier. We've heard the rumors, again, kind of our Annapolis kind of like speech going on in the girls' cabins. And that painted a picture for what, again, historically, like if you know anything about Auschwitz, then you at least know, okay, one of the biggest horrors was their liquidation, the gas chambers, the whole thing. And of course, like we're building to that here with the whole, they're getting their haircut to the short thing. It wasn't like the first time I heard about Auschwitz. The first time I ever saw what happened at Auschwitz was I read a comic, and it was it was basically they wasn't like just like something that involved Auschwitz. There was a story they did. It was a Marvel Max line, which means like the adult R-rated kind of stories for Marvel, and it was like a 5-part series, and it was about Magneto, and it wasn't just adapting what you saw in the movie. It was like putting Magneto, Eric Lenscher, back before he was even Eric Lenscher, as he was a kid, who basically was he goes through what we see in the movie essentially, where it doesn't feel like a ripoff. It's just he goes to Auschwitz and he has to survive in Auschwitz, and he isn't able to use his magnetic powers yet. He's used it like at one point in the book, and it only saves himself. It doesn't save anyone else. And you see him like the shaved head and like survival, and you bribe the guards to survive in place. So you get to see like the horrors of what people went through in Auschwitz. That was like the first time I ever saw horrifically what happened there before I even saw this movie years ago.
It was this was the part I was talking about earlier. This is the part where I was like when I had to look away almost.
But again, I love the reversal here, where again we build it up, we do all these iconic things where where they're in the showers, everything you expect it like that, and you're looking away, preparing for that.
And you see the disinfection, and you're like, oh no, you think it's coming.
And again, like the minute all their fears are coming true initially, and the lights go out, and then they're all screaming because they think, oh my god, the rumors were true. And now my read on this, and I could be wrong, and if you guys know anything, by all means, tell me. My read on this was that either they actually shower them the first, it's like the first day is the easiest, then they do it a different day, or most likely what I figured it was is that it's kind of the sadistic thing where they switch it up every now and again so people don't panic. Because if you're crowding there, you've heard rumors of what happened, then you're going to panic. But again, if it's a shower, then maybe the next day, eventually when it happens, you won't be as, you won't expect it. Therefore, everyone will go in willingly. So I think that's the psychological mind game of it all. But again, the water of salvation here. Like they have this end shot here. A woman's like reaching up to like the water, like, yes, it's not death.
God.
But again, I mean, that was such a. I'm still geeking out about it. That was such a smart move where everyone knows this one thing's going to happen. If you know anything about the Holocaust, it's usually this part.
You were hyping this scene up to me, Dragon, and you were being really vague about it. I remember.
Well, did it pay off?
Oh yeah.
And that was actually the scene I was talking about earlier, where I almost had to. I was like, that was almost hard for me to watch. I was like, because I was like, I know it's gonna happen. I was like, it's like that's the thing. Like, if you know anything, like that, this movie plays with your expectations. You're like, they're being sent to their death, and you're gonna have to watch it.
Well, here's a bizarre reference here, but again, I can make it relevant if it need be. But it's sort of there. It's sort of oh wait, no, I just realized that if I say it like that, it's gonna be a really dark joke. I don't want to do that. Never mind that.
All right.
Bring it up. Never mind. Sorry, I realized if I use the actual name for it, let's just Tiki. You'll know it. I'll tell you about it later.
Okay.
And then we look to see where the other people are going.
Yes.
They're getting to the stack.
Like when that flame is lit, when those ashes are going up in the air, that's when it's just a symbol of death.
Visual storytelling at its finest.
You got it. Again, right now what they're doing is they're kind of separating them for seeing what we kind of saw before. Again, the death hanging over your head kind of imagery.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually kind of interesting. I mean, I know I just watched it, but I don't remember every single detail. But that's really like the last major horrific element you actually see in this.
It is, and it's interesting that is kind of like a switch in the movie where it's like, okay, like that's kind of like the last major set piece of terror, and that set piece of terror turns into salvation. And I think the rest of the movie very much focuses on salvation, and because of that, I feel like that makes the movie a little bit more digestible. And
it gets you to a point of you don't necessarily know what's going to happen next. I mean, you don't know how far it's going to go, or like what point in history it's going to end at.
It's basically it's basically like Spielberg doing his optimistic ending again.
Okay, so real quick, I'm going to circle back to the J because that's important. But real quick, I just want to mention. So this is so Schindler going to Hess here. Schindler going to this guy and trying to essentially bribing him. Now this is a story. So again, Spielberg did his research here, but in doing research, you do run into a roadblock where there are a lot of different stories as to how exactly this happened. So here's the thing. Spielberg kind of validated, but if he heard the same story multiple times, then that's the one he was more inclined to go with. And that's he kind of blended what he heard the most of for this scene. So again, it's not necessarily wrong or it's false, it's just hard to substantiate. So what he did is, some people think, it's a question of if Schindler actually went directly to Hess or directly to Hess, then Auschwitz. That's a question was he directly there? Because he did facilitate this. Just a question of did he send some people theorize he sent a prostitute to Hess as a gesture of goodwill to deliver the diamonds that he was bribed with. And of course, there's a question of did just things go swimmingly when they were being sent back, or did Schindler have to be there? And it's such a great moment. I don't care whether it's a fact or fiction. I just love the following scene when he goes to Auschwitz. So it doesn's matter to me, but I thought it's kind of good. Spielberg having all his ducks in a row on this. So yes, the point you were making, Jacob. The
Spielberg optimistic ending.
Yeah.
It's the optimistic. So again, people, especially Terry Gilliam, have really criticized the optimistic ending, and I don't see why.
Terry Gilliam has he has a very, very, very unique reason to not like optimistic endings.
Oh, really?
Because of the Brazil situation.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. But yeah, he kind of griped about the optimistic ending. Some people have agreed with it, but I just view that again. It was a story that had it wasn't. It's basically I think. Yeah.
The story's basically validated by history, though.
Exactly. That's what it boils down to. Where again, like I think Gilliam or some critic, or it was good. I'm not sure which one, but one of them said that oh wait, Stanley Kubrick. Oh yeah, so Gilliam cited Stanley Kubrick, who said something really interesting to Spielberg about Schindler. So Stanley Kubrick said, you made a movie about success. A movie about the Holocaust is about failure. And I would say Spielberg met in the middle in a way that he should have, where again, it's a film that he does succeed in the end, but again, he succeeded marginally. And the point is, we have one of the most important scenes in the entire film. He doesn't, he acknowledges that. And I think that's what differentiates that from an optimistic ending. It's like, it's optimistic enough, but again, anyway, so more on that when we get
there. I feel like the ending is like, it's optimistic in terms of like a humanitarian outlook, but it's not like a happy ending per se.
I mean, especially if you consider the numbers.
Right.
So, whereas he saved 1,000 out of 6 million.
1,100, and historically they've upped that. In the movie it's 1,100, and in real life I think they've updated it to like 1,200. So like there were some that were discovered, some he by proxy saved. I don't know exactly how that goes, but points he saved 1,100. Yes. Yeah,
but still, it's like, I mean, like the movie's like basically like it makes him realize like he's like, what could I have done differently? Like he's gonna live for like what he could have done for the rest of his life.
Yeah,
like he could have done more. Like one more person I could have saved.
Real quick,
I feel like that performance at the very end of the movie, Dragon, I hope you'll kind of agree with me on this, because I know you like this kind of like extreme build-up. It's almost kind of similar to Tom Hanks and Captain Phillips.
Oh my God, it is. Yeah, you're right. It is kind of Captain Phillips. Okay, well, put a pin in that, all right? I want to talk about this scene. Right? It is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, because you know what I mean. I'm easy to please. I love it when we have a hero saving somebody, and just like when we can even do that in characters and things outside of superhero films or superhero works. I just love getting good elements of heroism like this, and this to me was always one of those great striking moments. And I just love this image of Oskar Schindler. He won one of our using the main girl that we've been building up this whole time, using Danka, and just like Schindler jumping to the fence of all these of all these young girls, of all these children, striking to the defense of these children, like, oh, stop, these are my Jews, because they're finally being acknowledged as Schindler Jews. These are my Jews, they're like, look at these fingers. And again, he's selling as he is really seeking. He's using his salesmanship purely to intimidate that guy and save these children. It's such a great image of this towering man and this really nice coat saving all these little girls by making a sales pitch. That's great. So heroic. And here's the walking from I was talking. This is mainly the walking I'm talking about here. Like this, and when we walk from point A to point B. Towards the end here, we're kind of doing a long walk that we got from War of the Worlds. Well, that this inspired in War of the Worlds, more accurate. Oh, by the way, just speaking of the walking here, I just want to mention another thing I've seen. Again, just to maybe have some levity here a little bit. It's funny. Kevin Smith, he did the Clerks cartoon series, and in the Clerks cartoon series there was this. Steven Spielberg in '93. He not only produced, he not only directed this, but in the same year he he produced, I believe, the Flintstones movie, and they did this gag
Oh
in
my
celebration
God.
of that, where it was Flintstones list, and what they did is it's what they did is, again, it's basically all the people who were rounded up on the train, and the way the train worked was they had to run away with their feet instead of a train.
Uh-huh.
So it was just it was absurdist, and that was one of the gags that kind of sold Kevin Smith on the Clerks series. But again, like Schindler's List, again, Spielberg kind of inspiring other filmmakers in a way. Wanted to get that in there. When we get to the ending, too, the ending, of course, is just wonderfully, just to talk about it now, you gotta waste to undercut the actual scene.
Sure,
I do love in the Seinfeld episode, there are two big Schindler references. So one is the whole "you are making out during Schindler's List." There's that, and there was the ending, which parodied the ending of this, where it was I'm not sure I remember the guy's name, not Judd Nelson, crap. Okay, point is, no, not Hirsch. It was the guy from Santa Claus, the guy from the Santa Claus movies, Neil. He was Neil in the Santa Claus movies. The point is that guy.
Oh.
He was, he was bonding with Jerry's parents, and he was like obsessively bonding with Jerry's parents, and he had to go on an airplane to leave. And as he was like walking through the gate, he turned around, and he basically they parodied the ending of the movie where it says, "This watch could have paid for a dinner with the Seinfelds. I could have sold this ring." It was so hysterical. Just knowing the fact that, again, the Seinfeld helped get Spielberg. It's all relative, folks. It's all full circle and wonderful. It really is. It's like they helped. That to me is so delightful. We get away with that gag because Spielberg, because Seinfeld got Spielberg through the night. How wonderful! Right. Speaking of nice stuff here, man, this is great. In so Schindler again. Now Schindler has I think in reuniting with his wife, Schindler has cemented himself not only as a hero, but as he's committing not just to a cause, but to a relationship, and he's kind of becoming the true patriarch and kind of father figure to the Jews, to the Schindler Jews, or the Schindler Juden. Again, and again, this is very Christmas Carol-esque kind of ending we have here, where again, Schindler he's happy that his business is failing, and that it's preventing the more deaths of innocent people. It's hindering the war effort rather than aiding in it. And what's so great about this, I realized on a rewatch, it kind of blew my mind, is that scene, the whole I'm going to be unhappy if a shell actually fires from a weapon. It's the gun jam from earlier.
Oh yeah. Oh.
That's what I'm saying thematically. That gun jam that saved the Jew's life is exactly what he wants to be a proponent of with his new failing business venture. And again, this is kind of putting a nice shine on what happened. This is like the only I guess the only sentimental touch, which doesn't bother me because I don't mind sentimental, is that Spielberg, he doesn't address the whole doesn't address the whole failed business element of Schindler, that he failed in business and he kind of died. He was never a rich man when he went. He never was a successful businessman. Again, I don't think it's a problem for him personally. I'm just saying that he was never as successful as he was during the war effort, and we kind of show that here, but in a very positive light. That he doesn't care. Again, it's Ebenezer Scrooge at the end. He doesn't care. He's all happy now. He's doing the right thing. And this is really full circle here, the Sabbath, because of course we open the movie in color with the Sabbath. And what do? We show the Sabbath, and we have just a little touch of color.
Right.
One could say we have a little flame. That initially, the way it went, we had full color, went to a flame, then black and white. Now we go from black and white, little flame, and by the end of the movie, full color.
Yeah, and it's kind of like it very much, again, with the theater experience. It's very much kind of like at this point this is almost kind of like the curtain call. You know what I mean? It's almost kind of like the bow at the end of the production almost.
Yeah.
Or actually, I would say no. The very end of the movie. The very end of the movie literally is that. You know what I mean? The very end of the movie literally is the people getting up in front of the audience and taking a bow. But this is all just kind of like the big sort of like, I would say, of course, the whole famous, like, I could have done more scene is the climactic, like, crescendo of the story. That's where all the cards lining up. That's where it's like, okay, it's perfect storytelling right here.
To continue with the theater motif of the whole people getting on front of the bow, in this case, it's represented by them laying the stones on Schindler's
That's
grave.
exactly what I'm saying, Jacob. That's exactly what I'm saying, yeah. Like, that scene with the stones, like, we don't need it except for emotional context. Except
you're
for,
right. That is absolutely
like, it's just a decompressing. It's like, you know, it's like, okay, like, we really need to just sit here and just, like, it's almost like the moments of silence. You know what I mean? Like, we need to just kind of sit here and just, like, think about what we've seen and just reflect on it.
Yeah. Now, this is great. Again, I think this is either we're skirting by, again, some good sentimentality where he just doesn't have the heart to tell him that he's broke, or I think what the editing is telling me here is that he's telling him that the war is over. I think that's what he's telling him here in the scene. But either way, it's kind of nice. I think the war thing it's sort of like one of my favorite bits from the terminal. The war is over.
God.
He's giving count the Spielberg blood flow in there.
Because The Terminal is our favorite Spielberg movie.
Tiki, I've said it before, okay? Sans Catherine Zeta-Jones, that is a really good movie. You've agreed with me to that extent. It's a good movie.
Yeah, well.
Come on. I'll take the Catherine Zeta-Jones hit, all right? I'll take that hit.
I think War of the Worlds is way better.
Oh, you are out of your mind. Anyway, let's get back to
No, I'm not. No.
Come on, you are out of your mind if you're saying, like, I'm saying
no,
Sans
absolutely not. Absolutely. War of the Worlds is way better than The Terminal.
Oh, for Robbie.
Yeah, I know, but Robbie's just a quirk.
There are no characters in that movie.
All right.
Better than never mind.
Okay, anyway, getting back to the heart of the matter here. So this is, again, I love that he yet again, in like another example, he saves Jews via his salesmanship, where basically after he announces, again, there's a great, Liam Neeson is made for speeches. Wish he could deliver all speeches almost sometimes. Like, we need just like a legion of actors to deliver speeches instead of like, you know, other people. You know, we need those like actors ready with speeches, like pre-recorded speeches or something. Moments like this here where, yeah, Liam Neeson, we need like an address, like a fireside chat with like Liam Neeson or something. Where it's this, he was kind of letting them know that the war's over, and of course, like laying out that, okay, I'll be with you till like 5 minutes after midnight. And of course, I'm sure, I think what he might also be because he said commandant, that implies that it's Goat, and Goat may have sent these men to, to kill all of these Jews. I mean, it might directly be Amon. We don't know. You know, it just might be like a commandant. We don't know if it's the same guy or not. The point is, like he's using his salesmanship to say, hey, guys, again, he's kind of reaching them through the way he tried to reach Goat in a way, where he's saying, like, hey, be with your families, be human beings, give into your humanity. Just, you by all means, you can do what you've been told to do, but if you're just following orders, and you can go home. It's kind of nice. Of course, we elevate him above the rest, and of course, even higher than that, we have the Nazis. So again, once they leave, then just Schindler is above the rest. So again, visually, we have like good kind of staging. All this here. And let me address one of the biggest ideas here, because I guess we can start here with the talk of Nazis, and of course, it pays off with the big Oscar scene of it all. No, I don't mean Oscar Schindler. I mean kind of like the scene that deserves an Oscar. Not it's Oscar Schindler. I mean, look, it's Oscar-winning performance. But in all seriousness, though, I think one of the biggest, most interesting ideas in the movie is, can someone be redeemed? Can someone truly be redeemed? Can someone who's, again, if you're a member of the Nazi party, could a Nazi, whether directly or just like affiliated with the Nazis, could someone who has been partying witness such horrible things? Can a technically bad person, someone who's technically aligned with with bad people, be redeemed? Can someone truly be redeemed? And I think the idea that we flirt with here and we kind of show, and again, like one of the biggest symbols of it, I forgot to mention at the very top of it, is, of course, we build to the reveal of Schindler at the very beginning of the movie. When we did that, the first thing that we saw was that he was a well-dressed man, and the last thing he put on was the Nazi pin, a symbol of, I'll play by their rules, but I don't necessarily, it's not my style, but I'll wear it. And that pin, it does speak volumes. And that, again, he's not without sin as long as he's wearing that pin. No rhyme intended. Sorry about that, but it's but it sounded like Johnny Cochran there for a second.
Schindler's List.
Yeah. No, but seriously, again, it's kind of it's like, can someone be redeemed? And I think the movie puts up a good argument that if you do enough, you can be redeemed.
Mm-hmm.
There's always that whole, like, can you truly wipe sin away? Like, will you always be haunted by it? I think this film makes an argument for that. What do you guys think? Can someone be redeemed?
Well, essentially, by the end of the movie, Schindler goes through this whole arc of where, at the start in Act 1, he's absolutely disgusted almost with the idea of someone looking up to him as a hero. Then by the end of the movie, we literally have Ben Kingsley being like, no, like, you did so much. You did so much. We owe you our lives. And he's just like, no, I could have done more. And I love that. I love that kind of juxtaposition where it's like, by the end of the movie, he's absolutely, like, not only embracing his heroism, but he's just like, almost kind of got this Batman-esque quality of like, there's always more I could do, Alfred. You know what I mean?
Like, one of my favorite moments from Batman, period. Honestly, Batman Begins, which has Liam Neeson in it, so keep it relevant, I guess. Batman Begins. You don't need to thank me. I never said thank you. You don't need to thank me, and you'll never have to. It's like that moment there. It's like, yes. But of course, I love the ring's a great gesture, by the way. You melted down from gold filling that was gleefully donated, and it's a really sweet gesture, really nice element from history there. They gave him this ring of thanks, and also it kind of fly again. People really enamored with the ring. I don't know how much this lands, but there's also another nice thing they do for him. They wrote him a letter, so assuming he gets caught, that they'll give him a good chance of getting a pardon, or at least give him a chance of getting leniency, because they all sign their names like this man, he's done so much for us, please, on behalf of the Schindler Jews, please, grant mercy to this man as he grant mercy for us, something along those lines. And again, this scene, this is the Oscar scene. Seriously, this is the big Oscar moment that the whole could have done more thing. It's such a moving scene.
And you absolutely, I get the sense you absolutely agree with my Captain Phillips thing.
I do, yes, and that basically what they do. So here's the thing: they do the Captain Phillips thing in the physical direction of it here, where Neeson, he drops the ring, and not out of like a disrespect, he drops it out. He's so overcome with emotion. That's kind of the instinctual emotion that Captain Phillips felt, where he gave it, he unleashed it all, and basically it's like Schindler has been a character. He's been so enigmatic the whole movie. He's been kind of bottling in. We have to interpret Schindler. We don't know things until he's making the list, honestly. And at this point, though, he's wearing it on his sleeve. That again. He's a hero in the sense of what a real hero is. As a hero, a true hero doesn't view himself as a hero. And that's what Schindler is here, where he did not...
He's like the firefighter who saved 5 people in 9/11, but is haunted by the fact that he couldn't save more. You know what I mean?
Yeah, again, I'll give you a Spider-Man parallel for a moment there. It's he saved the girl, but there was someone on the floor above that he could have saved if he had spider powers. Again, there's always more you could have done. It's like basically I think Superman, I'm going to quote Superman here, like it's the never-ending battle, or at least Batman 2 Superman. What did you always call it, Clark? The never-ending battle? That's what it is. It's it's like, you're never going to be finished, which is why, characters go on for 75 to 80 years at this point. That's why it's a never-ending story of saving people. You could always do more, and your work's never done. And I think for me, so the answer to the question, I think, is could someone be redeemed if they do as much as Oscar Schindler did, and importantly, view their work as not being done. They could have, if they don't accept the praise, if they still think they could have done more, then by that logic, you can be redeemed. I think you can truly be redeemed if you have that mindset that you don't take any pride from what you've done. He doesn't it's not like a gleeful happy ending for him. It's like it is a happy ending for their perspective. But it's like the way he breaks down.
Like I said, it's a happy ending from their perspective, absolutely, but also from the audience's perspective of we can walk away knowing full well this is a damn good man. This is a fucking awesome human being. You know what I mean? From a humanitarian point of view.
I mean, literally, of course, the ring says you save one life, you save the world entire, which is a very prolific quote, by the way.
I'm sorry, I have to mention this at least once. I'm kind of reminded of the whole like Justice League, like just save one person.
I know, right? Yes. I mean, it is.
It's the best scene in that movie.
True. That or some of the Superman stuff. But yes,
Yeah, right.
it is like save one person. It's absolutely, again, forget all the Batman references, but again, he wasn't a Batman.
And just like we said, it's just the fact that like Schindler is just completely devastated by the fact that he knows for a fact he could have saved one more person. And as Jacob brought up, one person in the grand scheme of the horrors of World War II, that's not much. That's not much. That's not a percentage point on the Richter scale.
I love the way that Schindler is basically, as it's being told to him in this scene, as he views it, is that they say you've saved generations, and that's true. I mean, in saving at least 1,100 people, he saved generations and generations of the children of those people that they're going to have. Like he's basically, he's saved again. The threat was like to exterminate the Jewish race. That was one of the big threats of the war. And
basically, while the others were trying to erase their history, he was preserving it.
Exactly. It's like he's like the most awesome historian in the history of. In the history, just to say it clearly, he's just one of those prolific historians in history. But yeah, I mean, he saved generations in the way he sees it. If he could have saved one person, he could have saved like a legacy of people. That's what one person represents to him. It represents, like, again, in preserving them, I could have saved more. Again, like he's less investing in himself, and he previously he was investing in his own legacy of like, I'm going to best my father. And in this case, he was the father who wants his children to live on in a way that kind of had kind of the father fanaticism. Where he's saving. He wants to like have a legacy, not of buildings, not of wealth, not of his name, but he wants a legacy of people. So, by the way, in our it's coming up. We're gonna have plenty of time, so I'll wait for it. And this is kind of that people like walking to a destination kind of paid off here, where this is the main image I was talking about. Like all these people have walked to this to the train station here. By the way, I love they're on the train tracks again. Kind of the thing that has kind of haunted them the whole movie. They are like now safely on without fear.
Right.
Of course, this will bring it full circle to a Bridge of Spies. Hey, the Russians have come too.
Exactly.
Red Army, yeah.
So I've kind of been trying to find an appropriate place to bring this movie up. I want to bring it up before we end things off. Have either of you seen 12 Years a Slave?
No.
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay, I feel like 12 Years a Slave, like don't get me wrong, it's not like a huge cultural touchstone like Schindler's List is, but by all means, I very much think it's this decade's equivalent to Schindler's List. It's got a lot of things like, it's got a lot of things kind of echoed from Schindler's List, like the brutality of it, but also kind of the documentary type feel to it. The fact that the villain is just an absolutely horrific human being who still has shades of humanity to him.
Yeah.
It's also got this really haunting fiddle score by Hans Zimmer, where he uses this score with the fiddle where basically the only way I can describe it is there's a suspense to the score where, much like how Dunkirk has the ticking clock, the score in 12 Years a Slave is essentially like you keep expecting a fiddle string to snap at any given moment.
Huh. Well, it does sound a little similar, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me explain this. So again, this was an idea. The ending will be link up with the Schindler Juden here. We link up with our characters in the movie with the actual survivors. So the idea is they came up with this halfway through the shoot, like while they were shooting, and I guess Spielberg's overcome. They kind of had the light bulb moment. And they had to scramble to get the actual, again, and bear in mind, this is before they had the foundation set up. So this is kind of like probably another reason. Honestly, I think this ending is one of the big reasons they came. Well, I'm jumping there. So we also have like the ending with. So in the end,
I like how this end for Gao is just like, it's so unglamorous. You know what I mean? It's just this afterwards. Just, oh, and by the way, he also just got fucking murdered.
Oh, what's so great about this ending too, T? I don't know if you noticed this, but when they kick the chair out, it's a delayed thing like the gun jam.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what I mean, though? It's just like Go just kind of gets like written out unceremoniously from the movie, and then like we just kind of cut to him like, almost comedically, like almost like halfway in black comedy. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, this asshole's dead.
Yeah, it's his punishment for not being able to change, and his like mundanity haunts him to the grave.
He doesn't beg for mercy.
True.
One thing I just noticed something though. Like in the version I'm watching, I mean, like I watched like 2 versions, one on Amazon. On this one, like some of the text is actually missing. Like it usually like it described what happened to him. That's like missing in the Netflix version.
Oh my, yeah, I think you're right. I don't know why that is.
That's like it usually described like he was like hanged for, like in the Amazon version I watched, like he was hanged for his crimes against humanity. That didn't show up in the version I'm watching.
I remember that on the DVD. When I watched the DVD, wait, I'm trying to think that I won.
Okay, so I feel like this is a good place to kind of
I think the version I watched even like had the names of these people, of like the real survivors. It's not showing up.
I remember that. I remember the names of the survivors. So yeah, because I watched it for the bonus features. I watched the DVD. Yes, you're right. That had to be. Yeah.
All right, so Dragon, unless you have any more background on this final sequence, I feel like this would be. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, one last thing, then absolutely, I got you. So again, they got this idea halfway through the shoot, and they had to scramble to get the actual Schindler Jews, and most likely that's probably half the reason they found at least that maybe lit the fire for the Shoah Foundation of like, hey, we found all these guys, let's interview them and let's make something out of that. And of course, after the financial success of the movie, they they kind of built the Shoah Foundation, and so. Let's see. So they're visiting the graves, and when they're visiting the graves here, they are with their counterparts, at least either a descendant or the actual person. So we have the actor on one side as playing a descendant, with kind of the older actual person. So again, I'm pretty sure if we see that little girl, then she's gonna be we're gonna have like the old woman who is either the little girl, or like a relative of the little girl, like maybe maybe the aunt or something of the girl. I don't know. I'm not sure. The point is. Last thing. So with this all, we have over currently we have over at least around 2007. I don't know if this has grown or not, but we now have with the Shoah Foundation 52,000 survivor testimonies, like other people who have survived beyond the Schindler.
Oh wow,
very impressive.
Yeah. Okay, so I have no idea what happened to Sandy. He just kind of pieced out. So I guess final thoughts. Let's just because obviously we've been here for over 3 hours already. I don't think we need to sit through the whole credit sequence. Let's just kind of quickly go round robin into some final thoughts and then call it a night. All right.
And again, folks, sorry about the whole text kerfuffle. We had no idea going into this. Sorry about that.
Something was off about this version.
Well, again, if anyone's curious, Schindler eventually, he faced some charges, but he was able to walk away from it. And what happened was really nice. One last thing about it, and that's the only little text I can remember from it. Unless you got anything, Jacob, is that Schindler, the foundations that were set in place for Holocaust survivors, not Shoah, but other foundations, they did take care of him. Like they gave him like I want to say like $15,000, like maybe a regular interval. At least they took care of him so he could maintain himself. So they took care of him until the end, which is kind of nice.
Okay, so I guess I'll start things out with my final thoughts. I mean, as I said, this is a fantastic movie. It absolutely is. It's not my favorite nor the best Spielberg movie, but it might be the best movie directed by Steven Spielberg. It's absolutely the best movie directed by Steven Spielberg that doesn't necessarily have that kind of like E.T. like childhood sense of whimsy and wonder and magic attached to it. It's absolutely the best gritty Spielberg movie. I would say in terms of watchability, like I said, I would put Private Ryan a little bit over this just because Private Ryan is a little bit easier to stomach. Like Private Ryan's not an easy movie, but it's got a little bit more of a foundation of like, okay, you're not going to just go through hell and back, But with this one, like I said, I think the main thing that I kind of attached to with this is just sort of the leads themselves, like Schindler and Gao. And I'm sorry, I keep saying Gao.
Yeah, I keep thinking you're thinking of Madame Gao or something.
I know.
It's like Goth. Like there's a silent E. It's like goat, but there's a silent E instead of it. It's like Goth.
Right, but that dynamic right there is just kind of like the big sort of like, all right, like the whole movie kind of hinges on that. All all the philosophical debate, all the moral ambiguity, it all kind of hinges on that one sort of exchange and dynamic. And I don't know, like I said, it's definitely like, it's not the Spielberg movie that we're going to just be like, hey, it's a Saturday night, let's pop in Schindler's List. But it's obviously like the turning point for Spielberg in his career, was the moment where Spielberg kind of got, you know, like above and beyond a sense of legitimacy about himself and his filmography. So for that, we have to give it all the respect in the world. All right.
Should I go
Jacob,
next?
what do you got?
Like, this is a thing. As I mentioned before, I did watch this. I did rent this many years ago, but I never actually got through it. Not necessarily out because like it was hard to watch, but just because like I stopped watching it and I had to return it and I never rented it again. But so and pretty much you can pretty much say I spent 6 hours today watching this movie.
Yep, I'm right there with you, buddy.
Like including the time we just spent now. And I must say that definitely it can definitely be a harrowing experience. I mean, considering like this is like considering this stuff knowing this stuff actually happened in real life, you can definitely call this movie sobering in a way. Like as you pointed out, like gone are the whimsical fantasy of Spielberg, and here's like the cold harshness of reality. But as a film itself, like it's as you guys pointed out, definitely is like his masterpiece and probably is like his most like one of his most personal works, and like it's definitely something that I wouldn't watch all the time, but I probably would like to watch again because it's just like a masterclass in filmmaking.
All right. So for me, this is the film that made Spielberg untouchable for a reason. I felt like it really feels like that. Because this is the one, like, you make this film if you're a filmmaker and you make a film like this, a film that again does impact the course of history. This is one of the things I can imagine. Like Spielberg might be at maybe his most successful peak, at least one of the most successful peaks with '93, where you have Jurassic Park as your blockbuster, and then you have this, which kind of solidifies you with the critics, and the other thing solidifies you with the audiences.
It's not like this movie was exactly a slouch at the box office either. It garnered more than $300 million.
Exactly, because this was like,
this is like Jurassic Park was a slouch with critics.
Well, I know. So I'm just saying, like, they were both kind of like, they both spoke. If one
for sure
didn't reach everybody, then it reached someone else in the other department. The point is, they both made his career. So they both so this film, in many respects, I feel made Spielberg untouchable for a reason. And it to me, it feels like it's his masterpiece. Look, we love Jaws, we love Indy, we love Jurassic Park, we love E.T. Love all. Those are blockbusters, those are movies, those are experiences, those are all of those things. But this is history that made history. Again, we built the Shoah Foundation. Spielberg himself has viewed this film as, by proxy, as his most important film because at the end, it created the Shoah Foundation. Therefore, it's a huge. It had a big impact on the world. If you can do that with a film, that's really impressive. I mean, this is Spielberg making one of the Oscar movies. And I don't mean Oscar Schindler. I mean, it's one of the Oscar movies.
Although it totally is an Oscar Schindler movie.
It is, and that's great. So by proxy, it's like one of the Oscar movies. Spielberg making like a film in like the truest, bluest sense of the word. Again, Spielberg making it's not a Spielberg movie. It's a film by Spielberg. Mm-hmm. And again, it's not as it's not as artsy. It's not a film that he made as an artist. It's a film he made as a human being. A film that he made as a good man.
All right. Well said. Well said. So that will do it for us on Spielberg Month this year, folks. I'm glad that we finally got through Schindler's List. That's always been kind of a daunting podcast to get through, but 3 of the 4 of us made it.
Oh, we just lost Sandy. We're fine.
To wait Sandy, but I digress. But in the meantime, folks, stay tuned until next year when we embark once again on our flight of wonder into Spielberg Month. Do 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 do.
Yeah.
It's Oscar Schindler.
That's us.